Romanian Eagle. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476, The Collapse of the Soviet Army. The fall of Seedles put the Soviet forces in Poland at risk. The soldiers of the 3rd, 12th, and 16th armies who were evacuating from Warsaw immediately burst into an uproar when they heard that Seedles was being occupied. Many of them have secretly left the army and retreated to the territory of Soviet Russia. No matter what the political commissars say. The 4th and 15th armies were even worse, fighting against the Polish army on the Vistula line. When he heard that Seedles was occupied by Poland behind him, it almost caused a mutiny. If the commander hadn't pressed him, he would have collapsed on his own. However, although it was barely pressed down, someone pushed him. The Polish 5th Army, led by its commander General Sikorski, immediately launched a counterattack against it, causing a rout of the frightened 4th Army. Within a day, the 4th Army had retreated 40 kilometers and was approaching the East Prussian border. The 15th Army in the lower reaches of the Vistula River also became a frightened bird and immediately moved the troops to the East Prussian border. After planning to join the 4th Army, it will retreat to the Bug River along the line of Mwa and Ostrovinka for a time. The Soviet troops in Poland retreated to the Bug River. They planned to hold off the attack of the Lobo coalition first, and then fight against it after receiving reinforcement. However, their wishes will not be accepted by the Robo armies, especially the Polish side. As far as Poland is concerned, the huge strategic advantage that it has finally acquired at a huge cost cannot let the upcoming victory slip away. So after the capture of Seedles, Piłsudski immediately set out on the road with the Assault Corps and part of the 2nd Corps. Their next target is Ostrov. As long as they capture this town on the Bug River will become their natural defense against the Soviet army. For the Soviet army, who is currently panicking and demoralized, this is not a natural danger. When Poland was ready to turn the plan into reality, Admiral Ferit also led the Romanian army that defeated the Soviet interception and rushed to Brest Point on the road from Warsaw to Minsk. A long line of Romanian soldiers could not see the end. The soldiers, horses, vehicles and artillery on the road looked like a mess from a distance. However, when you go to the front, you will find that everything is in good order and each has its own rules of travel. And on the side of the road, there are military police officers wearing white helmets from time to time, directing the traffic on the road. Admiral Ferit, who was in command of them, marched in the middle of the team with his own headquarters. And the sign of his headquarters is very obvious. There are dozens of vehicles that are produced by Volkswagen and Luck-like buses, which is his mobile headquarters. However, these cars are different from the public transportation vehicles in the city. In order to facilitate the movement of the Wild Vision, the body has been raised a lot. And compared to public transport vehicles with 6 wheels, this vehicle has 8 wheels. And not only that, the tire width is wider than that of civilian vehicles. In addition, in the configuration of the engine, its 120 horsepower engine is also enough to ensure that it has a good maneuverability in the field. In terms of performance in all aspects, this is the best field command vehicle at present. The only disadvantage is that it is too expensive. The cost of up to 51,000 lei is almost catching up with the tank. However, who made the current military prestige enough, so he ordered more than 40 vehicles in one go, and this time Admiral Ferit brought more than 10 vehicles. The effective use is not bad, and it can control the situation of the battlefield at any time while traveling. Moreover, its large field radio station can keep in touch with Warsaw and the country at any time, which makes His Excellency Admiral worry a lot. How is the situation now? Ferit looked at the map in the car and asked the communication staff member beside him. At present, the enemy's 11th and 14th armies have been driven to Malorata by our army. The 7th, 11th, and 17th divisions are watching them and will not let them approach Brest. In addition, the Polish 3rd Army has already driven in the defense of Seedles. A small group of Soviet troops has appeared outside the city, but these troops did not engage with the defending Polish 3rd and 4th Corps. In addition, the Polish army under the command of Marshal Piłsudski has rushed to the Bug River side. They are now preparing to cross the river. His Excellency the Admiral was in the slightly swaying carriage while listening to the report of the staff officer. While marking the location, he said on the map point. After reading the map, Fried concluded, "It seems that this war will make the opponent suffer a big loss. At present, these half-encircled Soviet troops, if they don't move quickly, they can't run away. It's gone." Speaking of which, His Excellency Piłsudski has a big victory this time. After Felicite summed up others, he began to care about himself. How far is it from Brest? At present, the striker of our army has arrived in Biowa, only 28 kilometers away from Brest. Hearing the staff officer's answer, Fried calculated that it was only a day's journey. Then what about the troops in the city? There are still only 2 divisions of Soviet troops on defense, but they have recruited residents in the city to join the army. According to the latest information, they have recruited 6,000 people. A lot of sandbag fortifications have been arranged in the city, and they have forced residents to build outside the city trench. In addition, we received the latest information that yesterday Minsk sent 3 trains to Brest, most of which were support weapons such as artillery and machine guns. Hearing the report of the staff officer, Felit said with a smile, "It's too late to support now. If the strength of the 2 divisions can block my army, this is a joke." From the point of view of Admiral Farit, Brest was already in his pocket at present, and the only 11th and 14th armies that the enemy could support were deliberately driven to other places by him. He also specially sent 3 divisions to watch the opponent, where there might be reinforcement. In fact, looking at the map, the motorized units consisting of cavalry divisions and armored brigades that defeated the Soviet cavalry army were closest to here. However, considering that the casualties of the 2 troops are not small, and the loss of weapons and equipment is too large, the armored brigade is talking about, His Excellency Admiral only let them be responsible for the reconnaissance of the surrounding area. The next day, Romanian troops approached the city. Ferit looked at the panic-stricken frontline Soviet soldiers, and he couldn't help laughing. Obviously, the Soviet army recruited local residents and put them on the front line, which made Romania cheaper. These basically untrained recruits will completely help Romania to break through the city. Since the Soviet commander was in a daze, of course he would accept this gift. With a big wave of his hand, after a brief shelling, the Romanian troops of the 2 divisions rushed towards the position immediately. For the next battle, he has no interest at all. And the result was completely within his expectations. After only 1 charge, the local recruits were forcibly recruited in the front line and they were defeated. Many people raised their hands and shouted to them, "I'm a Poles. I'm willing to take the Romanian army and drive away these Russian troops." So the next battle was much simpler. With the help of these locals, the Romanian army took less than 2 days to occupy the city. There was not much time left for the Soviet army. Chapter 477, Brest's Offensive and Defensive Battle. 1. After the Romanian army captured Brest, the Polish army led by Piłsudski finally rushed to the Soviet 4th and 15th armies to take Ostrov and Mekhnets on the East Prussian border. At this point, his plan was successfully completed, and the 5 army groups of up to 400,000 Soviet troops were surrounded by him on the Mazashev field. And when the news reached Minsk, Tukhachevsky was stunned. Lenin and others, who had been following the war in Moscow, immediately sent him a telegram when they heard the news, demanding that the besieged Soviet troops be rescued at all costs. So Tukhachevsky immediately dispatched troops to prepare to rescue the besieged Soviet troops. The 3rd, 7th, 9th, and 17th armies were forced to gather in Minsk in just 3 days to advance towards Brest. The besieged Soviet troops also organized troops to prepare to break out of the siege. A final battle will inevitably be avoided. On August 21st, the Romanian army that had already entered Brest was standing by in the fortifications, and the Soviet rescue troops outside the city had already made preparations for the war. This time, the Soviet army was able to come to the rescue so quickly, thanks to Commander Tukhachevsky's battlefield intuition. When he got the news of the counterattack of the Robo coalition, he immediately realized the harm to the Soviet army in Poland. In addition to issuing orders to withdraw immediately, he also ordered the Soviet troops in the rear to assemble to Minsk immediately. and his reaction is not unpleasant, but the speed of Luobo's army is faster. The Soviet army in Poland failed to withdraw due to the delay of the Polish defenders, so the rescue he prepared had to act point. That's why it took only one day for Romania to capture Brest, and Soviet and Russian reinforcement arrived point. Looking at this key city that was captured by Romania one step later, Tukhachevsky immediately ordered an attack regardless of the exhaustion of the troops marching, because he knew that if he rested for one more minute, he would give his opponent one more minute to prepare point. Boom, boom, boom. Violent artillery to open the way is the characteristic of this era. No one will be an exception point. Of course, the defending Romania would not let the Soviet artillery perform a one-man show, and immediately launched a counterattack against the looting Soviet artillery. The artillery of the two sides will fight you and I at the beginning of the game, which is very lively point. When the artillery focused their attention on the other side, the Soviet Russian soldiers, under the command of the leading officer, jumped up and charged the position. Tukhachevsky was also a generous man. There was neither fire reconnaissance nor tentative attack. As soon as he came up, the Soviet army of a division launched a full-scale attack. This is not to blame for him, who can't afford to save soldiers, like putting out a fire point in the face of the fierce attack of the Soviet army. As soon as it came up, the commander of the frontline defenders also responded point. Order the machine guns to fire, intercept the enemy into two parts. The Romanian officers on the position saw the menacing Soviet troops and immediately gave orders. At present, in the Romanian infantry code of practice, the tactics of the grassroots squad and platoon are all developed around the machine gun, especially the role of the machine gun on both offense and defense. The evaluation of the squad leader's performance is all about commanding his subordinates to conduct offensive and defensive drills under the cover of machine guns. By the way, this tactic was created by Marshal Pretian and then supplemented by Admiral Freet point with the firing of machine guns on the position. It was obvious that the attacking Soviet army had broken up. This is not because the attacking soldiers are slow, but the interception firepower at this distance is significantly increased. This is also the skill Romania learned from the Germans. In the Somme, the Germans used the shooting skills to cross the top of the British soldiers in the front row, causing the British to lose 60,000 people in one day. And after the war, Romania learned their skills from Germany point, so the charging Soviet troops tasted the power of this combat skill, and the projectile machine gun bullets fell from the sky and smashed into the middle of the charging team, forcibly intercepting the formation into two sections. Even worse, the Soviet army did not use metal helmets, which made the power of the machine gun projectiles even greater. Many Soviet soldiers fell on the battlefield under the silent blow of this blow point. However, the Soviet army deserved to inherit the tradition of Russia. In the face of the increasing casualties, they insisted on gritting their teeth, completely ignoring the casualties of their comrades around them. The Soviet army's desperate charge put a lot of pressure on the frontline positions. As a commander, Felite, of course, saw it in his eyes, but he was completely unable to care about the frontline positions, because the 11th and 14th armies of the previously defeated enemy could be approaching Brest. The 7th, 11th, and 17th divisions intercepted each other in an unknown area 15 kilometers away from Brest. In addition, the Soviet First Army, which suffered heavy casualties, also collected the remnants and tied up some supplements and made a roundabout attack to the rear of Brest, but they were stopped by the Mobile Corps composed of cavalry divisions and armored brigade. The two sides fought a battle near the Bauga River, and the fighters of the Soviet First Army were currently repelled. However, Lieutenant General Wiedesicki did not dare to relax their vigilance, for fear that the supply line would be intercepted by the Soviet cavalry, which would be really fatal. Be aware that the Romanian army is very dependent on supply lines. However, while Admiral Ferit was dealing with intelligence on other fronts, the attacking Soviet troops finally rushed to the position despite the casualties. Quick Russian point. A Soviet army officer, waving a pistol, shouted loudly to his soldiers, kick them out. Likewise, the Romanian officers on the position were also commanding the soldiers, intending to drive them away. So the two soldiers fought together. Kill a Romanian soldier in the position, holding a rifle with a bayonet, charged at a Soviet soldier who had just jumped into the position. On the other side, several Soviet soldiers jumped into the position and immediately greeted the Romanian soldiers who came. Soldiers from the two sides confronted each other in the narrow trenches, and bayonets, daggers, shovels, stones, etc. became weapons. They don't mind using it, as long as it can cause fatal damage to the opponent. A Soviet soldier here took the bayonet out of a Romanian soldier's belly, and a Romanian soldier over there directly swung a shovel to knock a Soviet soldier down. In the trenches, the soldiers of the two sides gathered together, and each cleaned his own section of the trench with the advantage of the number of people. But at this time, a standing tool in Romania became a big killer in the trenches. As a tool for digging trenches to reinforce positions, the engineer shovel is particularly useful in trenches, and many Soviet soldiers fell on this inconspicuous tool. In addition, the MP-18 submachine guns and shotguns in the Romanian army were even more powerful in the trenches, defeating the Soviet soldiers. These two weapons, which were born with the United States and Germany, were specially introduced by Romania after seeing the good results in the First World War. At present, I can see that they are worth the money. With the sound of bang, 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 and the sound of submachine guns, the Soviet troops that rushed into the position for a while were retreating. Many soldiers were squeezed out of the trenches, which made the leading Soviet officers jump, but there was nothing they could do. The Mosin Nagant rifle they used had a bayonet with a length of 1.7 meters and could not be used at all in the trenches. So in front of Romania's various trench killers, the Soviet soldiers were driven out of the trenches one after another. The Soviet commander who was in charge of commanding the battle saw this situation and had absolutely no choice. The angry general's hat fell to the ground. So the Soviet army's first attack ended hastily under such circumstances. Chapter 478, British Offensive and Defensive Battle, Part 2. Unlike the generals who commanded the battle on the front line, the failure of the first attack was completely expected by Tukhachevsky, and he didn't hesitate. After the attacking soldiers returned, the second wave of troops was ready. And this time it was no longer one division, but two divisions under the command of the commander of the 19th Corps, General Volnov. Moreover, after seeing that the first wave of attacks was not smooth, he specially collected a lot of short guns, sharp axes and other sharp weapons suitable for trench use. In addition to this, 4 grenades were also issued to each soldier. It seems that General Volnov fully took into account the shortcomings of the previous battle. So, when the Soviets attacked again, the defending Romanian troops could clearly feel the difference. Fortunately, the current Soviet attack is still a group charge, which allows the defenders on the position to harvest a wave of leaks. This is not to say that the Soviet commander will only use the tactic of group charge, but the conditions do not allow it. First, because of the limited time, the Soviet army could not circumvent the critical point of Brest. Second, the Soviet army, which was established less than 2 years ago, lacked grassroots troops that used other tactics. To know the prototype UTA tactics of the famous infiltration assault, it requires veterans. Few of the Germans could use this tactic, let alone the Soviet troops who were recruited for 3 months and went to the battlefield. The French Zugin barrage tactics are very demanding for artillery, and they are very technical. Moreover, this tactic requires a large amount of artillery and ammunition, and the Soviet army cannot afford it at present. Therefore, at present, the Soviet army can only continue to rely on its own rich human resources and compete with its opponents for consumption. Even if 3 or 4 people fight against one opponent, this is acceptable to the Soviet army. This is also one of the reasons why Edel has always been reluctant to participate in the Russian Civil War. How could Romania's population of more than 20 million dare to compete with Soviet Russia? If there are really 300,000 to 400,000 casualties, it will greatly damage Romania's vitality. You must know that the Romanian people currently only occupy a little more than 6 layers of the domestic population. The population of 300,000 to 400,000 young men can account for between 2–3% of domestic men. Considering children and the elderly, this is a number that is approaching the same age group. This is a core workforce of 18 to 35-year-olds, and I don't know how much contribution to be made in China. Not to mention that the current main force of the army is still the Romanian people, who are the basis for their own governance, and it is estimated that the country will be turbulent if they lose. If it weren't for the alliance with Poland this time, plus it opened the domestic market to Romania, and Romania faced the Soviet army alone, No amount of interests could make him move. This is also why no one dares to ignore the role of the Great Eastern country, even if it is so poor. Just as soon as 40 million people are put there, it takes a long time for others to think about it. So before the advent of nuclear bombs, population was one of the most important components of national power. This also allowed Edel to seize the good times, the disintegration of the surrounding great powers, the discoloration of discoloration, and the defeat of defeat. There are no tigers in the mountains overnight. Of course, monkeys are needed to be kings. Unfortunately, Romania is the biggest one. When the Soviet army launched another offensive without giving the defenders a break, Ferit, who was watching the game from behind, also changed his face. This Russian army is really going crazy. Seeing that the situation was not right, Ferit immediately ordered, let the 5th Division reinforce the frontline positions, and let the Soviet and Russian sides extinguish the fire. Following his order, the officers and soldiers of the 5th Division immediately reinforced the frontline positions that received reinforcement. Had a different effect, as the 5th Division, that has fought the Romanian foreign war for more than 10 years, its combat effectiveness does not need to be said. When it goes up, it encounters the Soviet army preparing to enter the position. The 5th Division was also bold and daring, and directly launched a countercharge against it. When the soldiers of the two sides were in a stalemate on the front line, the Soviet soldiers immediately felt the difference of the 5th Division. Whether it is cooperation or the combat skills and will of the soldiers, they are much higher than the defenders in the original battlefield. These reinforcement of the 5th Division soldiers joined the battlefield in groups of 3 and 3 groups as a group. This tactic is very similar to the famous 3-3 tactical action of the later rabbits. However, the changes made by the Romanian army combined with their actual situation, which mainly combined the use of machine guns. After all, a Madsen can hold several guns. But even so, this variant of leading tactics is enough to make the Romanian army stand out from the crowd when fighting in squads. This closely coordinated and fresh tactics immediately cost the Soviet soldiers a big loss. The 5th Division used its advantages in weapons and coordination to make the 2 Soviet divisions who were on the ground miserable. Tukhachevsky, who was also watching the game from the rear, had a headache. After all, he is only 27 years old. No matter how talented he is, it is impossible to immediately come up with a solution to this tactic. But there is one thing he is very clear about: no matter what tactics it is, it must have excellent junior officers to achieve it. In the current Soviet army, it is difficult for such junior officers to appear, because they all inherited the legacy of the Imperial and Russian era, and in the old era, there was not enough attention to grassroots tactics. Even if there are excellent officers emerging among them, they will be trapped by the quality of the soldiers. However, no matter what Tukhachevsky did, he could not help the currently disadvantaged frontline Soviet soldiers. With the help of the 5th Division, the Soviet army was pushed out a little bit at the front line. Looking at Tukhachevsky, he shook his head. It seems that the next offensive strategy needs to be modified. At this moment, a staff officer came in and reported, "Comrade Commander, the 11th and 14th Armies have requested us to send reinforcement to assist them in attacking the blocked Romanian army." Smilga, what are they doing? How are they fighting? Hearing the news, Tukhachevsky immediately felt a burst of fire. Some of these things are not easy to attack. Only he knows. In the face of Tukhachevsky's anger, the staff officers did not dare to be afraid of getting angry. Looking at the staff officer, who was a bit scared like a quail, Tukhachevsky grabbed the telegram and read it himself. It turned out that Smilga was complaining. They said in the telegram that they had lost too much blocking force before, especially the technical weapons such as artillery and machine guns. And the Romanian weapons that stopped them were fully equipped, and they couldn't move at all. So they are looking for Tukhachevsky to support some technical weapons. Of course, it would be best if there are new troops. Tukhachevsky looked at Smilga's request for help on the telegram and fell into deep thought. It is definitely impossible not to give. After all, they suffered a lot in battle before, and if they gave more, they would also be short on their side. After all, weapons such as artillery and machine guns are not many in the army. Even in the era of Imperial Russia, the Russian army was not known for its technical arms. In the end, he mobilized 2 artillery regiments for them, and also collected a batch of machine guns and other weapons from the army, and sent them over. As for the reinforcement, forget it, they are all lacking point. While Tukhachevsky was trying to rescue the besieged Soviet army, the Polish army commanded by Piłsudski was also racing against time to encircle and annihilate it. Point among them, the 3rd, 12th, and 16th armies, which were surrounded by Warsaw to Siedlce, were the first to be attacked by the superior forces of the Polish army. Piłsudski would throw in all the troops, except the 5th Corps and the Assault Corps, which besieged the 4th and 15th Soviet armies. The Polish army of up to 400,000 launched a fierce attack on the three armies. The Soviet army, which had run out of ammunition and food and was besieged, collapsed in less than 3 days. As many as 180,000 Soviet soldiers were taken prisoners, and many more fled. Point at this time, the Polish people were not polite to these lonely Soviet soldiers, and organized personnel to arrest the lonely Soviet soldiers. As for the 4th and 15th armies, seeing that the situation was not good, they immediately retreated to East Prussia. They were also disarmed by the Germans and temporarily detained. So far, the Soviet army in Poland has no organized troops, which disappointed Lenin and others in Moscow. Point at this time, it was impossible to continue the fight, and the negotiation proposal was sent from Moscow to Warsaw. The Polish army, which suffered a lot of losses, could not fight at this time, and the proposal of Moscow was also accepted. Point the next negotiation will resolve the disputes between the two sides. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 479. The Treaty of Riga. Gari, as the capital of newly born Latvia, is here today for a negotiation concerning the three countries of the Seporis. In addition to the three parties involved in this negotiation, the United Kingdom, France, the United States and other countries also sent personnel to observe. Point as for why it is different from the two parties in the original history, it needs to talk about the issue of Romania's seizure of Western Ukraine. Because Rosu had not had any diplomatic negotiations on it except for one fight before. In this negotiation, Lenin and others, with the attitude of solving the border issue on the Western Front together, demanded that it must be a tripartite meeting. And Edel agreed immediately, so there was this meeting. Point don't think that Edel has any good intentions in agreeing to this meeting. Luobo is a comrade in arms, while Britain, France, the United States and other countries are taking sides. If Rosu negotiates alone, how can there be such a big advantage? Point as for Poland, this time Piłsudski, who made great achievements, was abandoned. Because the current government leadership is controlled by Dmowski's National Democratic Party, his claims for Greater Poland have been ignored by the other side. To blame, he can only blame him for his defeat in the early stage, allowing Dmowski to find an opportunity to seize the leadership of the parliament, which is currently the most powerful in the Polish political structure. Point as for the customs union between Poland and Romania, Dmowski also knew about it, and he did not object. Although he regards Germany as the main threat, the Soviet Russia behind him will not ignore it. As for Romania, the only one capable of helping Poland at present, how could he offend him? This is also the general perception in Polish politics even after the war. Many people believed that Romania was more important than Britain and France because they had direct access to Romanian reinforcement. Moreover, the combat effectiveness of the Romanian army was also vividly displayed in this war. As for the Soviet Union, it was mainly because of the battle with Poland that Lenin and others discovered that they originally wanted to save the Polish workers and peasants who were oppressed by the Polish landlords and nobles, but the Polish workers, peasants, soldiers and landlords and nobles united to fight against the Russians. Only then did the Soviet Union realize that it is not so easy to put class ideology above the sovereignty of other countries. Therefore, the policy of Soviet Russia has also been transformed by the world working class united into the reality of socialism in one country. Therefore, in a peace negotiation, all three parties are sincere. Poland sent a delegation headed by the President of Parliament Dmowski this time, while Romania sent a delegation headed by Prime Minister Brătianu, and the Soviet Union sent a delegation headed by the People's Commissar for Foreign Affairs Zicherin. Delegation point as for the host Latvia, in addition to providing venues and security, this new small country has no other strengths to show point. After everyone was seated, Zicherin, the representative of the Soviet Union who proposed peace talks, took the lead in speaking point. Ladies and gentlemen, our negotiation is based on resolving the territorial disputes between the three parties. This is good for us and the people. It can bring peace to the war-torn countries and devote more energy to resuming production. Zicherin put the reason for the Soviet-Russian peace talks on a moral level at the very beginning. There is absolutely no spirit to liberate the whole of Europe before point. So this time one of the negotiators, Dmowski, responded to Zicherin. Mr. Zicherin is right. We are here with a peaceful attitude. However, to resolve the territorial disputes first, we must divide the ownership of the area, otherwise the peace talks will not achieve results. For Dmowski's remarks, Prime Minister Brătianu, who was about to retire, nodded in agreement. They need to see the sincerity of the Soviet Union before they can continue to talk point, and Zicherin quickly showed the sincerity of the Soviet Union point. Mr. Dmowski is right. The territorial disputes under negotiation do need to be divided first. We intend to give up our territorial claims to the West Polaris region in a peaceful manner and express our sincerity. As for the dispute with Romania, we will also give up Rovno and Shepetovka as a condition in exchange for the premise of friendship and friendship point. The conditions given by Zicherin for Soviet Russia are quite favorable. This is on the basis of Soviet Russia's plan to recognize the Curtain Line and the recognition of Lida, Pinsk, and Baranovich that Poland had previously occupied. You must know that the Curtain Line is bounded by Brest, which is more than 80,000 square kilometers than before. Dmowski was a little moved when he heard the conditions given by Soviet Russia, but he also needed to consider the attitude of Prime Minister Brătianu. As for Brătianu, he was still a little surprised when he heard that Soviet Russia also had territorial compensation for Romania. Rovno and Shepetov add up to nearly 30,000 square kilometers, which is a good compensation for Romania. In fact, in the discussions within Soviet Russia, Lenin and others felt that Romania was more threatening than Poland. In order to stabilize Romania, it is reasonable to give a small amount of territory. After all, Soviet Russia currently does not have the strength to attack Romania, and Soviet Russia has always been isolated internationally. In order to break this state, it is imperative to stop the territorial war in European countries, because in the war in Poland, Lenin also saw the combined struggle of European countries. Moreover, the working class in Western countries has not experienced armed resistance, which makes him feel that the conditions for world revolution are not yet ripe. Therefore, the next development of Soviet Russia will become the most important thing. After all, Soviet Russia does not currently have the conditions to fight capitalism. Although the two countries are quite tempted by the conditions given by Soviet Russia, they have not reached the point of agreeing immediately. So next they want to squeeze the Soviet Union to see if they can force out some benefits. After all, they still have Soviet prisoners in their hands, and there are nearly 400,000 people in Germany, which is a good bargaining chip. We have heard the sincerity of the Soviet Union, and now let's talk about our conditions. After being hinted by Dmowski, Prime Minister Brătianu began to state their terms. First of all, the issue of compensation for Poland in this war. Because of the Soviet invasion, which caused huge losses to the Polish people, here we ask Russia to pay compensation of 150 million rubles. In addition, Russia should return historical Polish cultural relics. In addition, the Soviet Union should also regard Minsk as Polish territory and the disputed territory. In response, Poland gave up its oath of sovereignty over other disputed territories. As for my country, because of the merger with the Ukrainian government, my country also has the conditions to swear sovereignty over Ukraine. However, in a peaceful attitude, our country demands, in addition to Rovno and Shepetov, the territory of Zhytomyr. In response, our country will no longer swear an oath of sovereignty over other Ukrainian territories. It is also not seeking compensation. Zicherin couldn't help frowning after listening to Brătianu stating the conditions of the two countries. Minsk, as the most important city in Belarus, Moscow will not agree. Zhytomyr is the last city in Kiev facing the Romanian border. If it is given to Romania, Kiev will directly face Romanian pressure, which is also an unacceptable condition. Thinking of this, Chicherin couldn't help but said, "My Excellencies, we cannot agree to the conditions you have given us. Minsk and Zhytomyr division are an integral part of our side, and we cannot reach peace conditions on this." At this time, Brătianu retorted, "Why is it impossible? You must know that your country has lost in this war. If you lose, you need to pay compensation. This is an international practice. I don't believe your excellency is not clear." Facing the aggressive attitude of Prime Minister Brătianu, Chicherin could not help but counterattack. "As a working class country, our country will not accept your extortion. Your condition, in our view, is extortion. We are negotiating peace in a responsible manner, not accepting extortion." After Chicherin finished speaking, he looked at Brătianu with an angry expression, but the Prime Minister completely ignored his angry expression, and even had the mood to chat and laugh with others. But at this time Dmowski stepped forward and acted as a peacemaker. What needs to be discussed during the negotiation? It is normal for the two sides to have different conditions. Everyone is a diplomat, and I believe everyone understands this truth. Even though Dmowski was a peacemaker, he secretly satirized Chicherin. However, everyone is engaged in diplomacy, and shame has long been ignored. Chicherin's expression calmed down when he got the steps, so then the three parties started arduous negotiations around each other's conditions. Fortunately, the three parties are the same in terms of sincerity, so that the peace talks can continue. The negotiations lasted for 3 months. The final result of the negotiation was that the Lider, Pinsk, and Baranovich regions of West Belarus were ceded to Poland, and Minsk remained the capital of Soviet Belarus. In addition, Soviet Russia had to pay Poland 80 million rubles, as Poland was being divided up. Compensation, actually indemnity, for the economic input of the Russian Empire during the period. Moreover, the Soviet Union needed to return the Polish art that was looted by Russia after 1772. Then each other gave up claiming war reparations from each other. As for the terms between the Soviet Union and Romania, the two places of Rovno and Shepetov belonged to Romania. In addition, the Soviet Union gave Romania 50 million rubles of supplies as a condition for Romania to give up Zhytomyr, and it was also the end of the previous Russian-Soviet war. In addition, captured soldiers must be returned to their countries within 6 months. In addition, the three parties can no longer claim sovereignty over each other's territory. In private, Romania also held secret discussions with Poland on the issue of Eastern Galicia, and Poland finally gave up its sworn sovereignty over the territory. In response, Poland could call on Poles to return to the motherland in the region, which is also a favorable move to ease disputes between the two countries over the region. After all, the characteristics of the Poles make it difficult for Romania to assimilate them, and sending them back to Poland is also what Edel would like to see. So, when the dust settled, Edel turned his attention to the country. Chapter 480 Varna Shipyard, Part 1. Varna, a city under Romanian rule for nearly a decade, is not much more populated than it was in Bulgaria. However, Dolbo felt refreshed when he saw Varna, and he walked a little gracefully. This is of course a good thing, as he has finally been appointed to relocate the Varna shipyard. Of course, it is not to move the Varna shipyard, but the Royal William shipyard, to move and merge with it to form the largest shipyard in Romania. Since it is the largest shipyard, the basic dock and the supporting construction facilities need to be in charge, and the newly appointed factory manager has not yet arrived. So as the city government, we need to do our best. As the deputy mayor of Varna, he is of course bound to take on this burden. In fact, Dolbo had met His Majesty Edel before, and said a few words, but this majesty had no impression of him. Who asked him to meet Edel, who was still a prince, in Ploiesti when he was the secretary of Caraceri at that time, and now he knows who his backer is. There are people in the DPRK who only need to make achievements by themselves, then the credit will not run away. But if he did it, no one could help him. The Varna shipyard will undertake the construction work of the Romanian Navy, so it is highly valued by the above. As long as he can make achievements, then he is not unable to get the chance to be in power. For the sake of his own future, He was very enthusiastic about the work in the shipyard and almost planned to live and eat in the shipyard. So, when he woke up early this morning, he immediately rushed to the shipyard to check the progress. The Varna shipyard is located in the port of Dol, where the water depth is about 10-11 meters, which is completely suitable for the entry and exit of giant ships. And there is news that the Navy plans to use the port of Varna as the main base for ships to park. Because the port of Constanta is now more and more private ships, it is less and less suitable as a military port. As for Odessa, the problem of this port is the same as that of Constanta, which also undertakes the transportation of a large number of civilian ships, which is also not suitable point. And because Varna is now separated from Bulgaria, the port transportation of its goods will of course not choose to go through Varna. They all go to the port of Burgas in its territory. Therefore, Varna, which has a good port environment, has no problem using it as a main military port. And when he thinks of the huge popularity brought by the arrival of naval ships, Dorbo feels that the development here is promising. But unfortunately, he is not in charge at the moment. It is still very difficult for him to be the deputy, even with the help of his own benefactor. How is the progress of the shipyard now? As soon as he entered the door, Dorbo asked the person in charge of the construction of the shipyard without taking a sip. The person he asked about was Bodrik, a German engineer and a well-known shipyard designer in Germany. I saw this Bodrik calmly flipping through his record book and said, "At present, in the 3 main docks, dock number 1 is nearly completed and other equipment is still being installed, while the excavation work of dock number 2 is 61% and dock number 3 is currently only 33% due to higher requirements. If you want to speed up the progress, it is best to send some engineering equipment over." Listening to Bodrik's words, Dorbo couldn't help but let out a wry smile. You have to ask yourself to find engineering equipment. Don't you know that this shipyard has concentrated 80% of Varna's engineering equipment? Sorry, we only have these devices at the moment, and it's impossible to add more. After being rejected by Dorbo, Bodrik could only shrug his shoulders and say, "I'm sorry, Your Excellency Deputy Mayor, we can only implement this progress at the moment. You must know that docks 1 to 3 are really too big, especially dock number 3. The 60,000 ton dock can completely build ocean-going ships. But docks number 4 to 8 are built very quickly." Listening to Bodrik's words, Dorbo, who is in charge of supervising the shipyard, seems to have no other way. At present, the Varna shipyard has built 8 docks, ranging from 5,000 tons to 60,000 tons. In the face of building so many docks, Dorbo actually doesn't quite know what it is used for. But who made this shipyard built by the order above? He can only be responsible for the execution. But even if he had no other way to satisfy this Bodrik, the necessary urging was still needed. Mr. Bodrik, it's best to speed up the shipyard's progress at present. It's good for me, or you. I know, Your Excellency Deputy Mayor. But there are only so many workers at present, and the most important machinery and equipment are not enough, so I can't do anything about it. If I can finish the work 1 day ahead of schedule, I can earn 500 more lei, but now it is fastest. Hearing Bodrik's words made Dorbo a little discouraged. It seems that his dream of that outstanding achievement is somewhat in vain. It's all to blame for the people in the Navy. They keep urging the shipyard to complete it as soon as possible, making themselves exhausted. I don't know what the Navy is in a hurry. If Dorbo was to blame, the Navy would probably be dumbfounded. Can this be in a hurry? His Majesty promised to increase the Navy's shipbuilding funds next year. From less than 2 million lei, it has directly increased to 20 million lei. This is the largest increase in funding the Navy has ever received. This finally jumped from the construction of 200 or 300 tons of torpedo boats to the construction of 3,000 or 4,000 tons of cruisers. Of course they hope that the shipyard will be completed soon. Not only that, they have also selected the construction drawings. The talented chief designer AMS has designed a cruiser for them according to the conditions of the Black Sea. This cruiser, currently tentatively named codenamed Type Q, has a total length of 134 meters. The waterline length is 131 meters, the full width is 12.9 meters, and the average draft is about 5.6 meters. Displacement, about 4,600 tons. Standard, more than 5,400 tons. Full load. Main armament. 8. 150mm 45 caliber main guns, double column. The turret is open at the rear. 4. 500mm torpedo tubes anti-aircraft guns. 4. 40mm 45x caliber anti-aircraft guns, double column. Protection. The thickness of the main armor belt midship is 55mm, and the fore and aft are gradually reduced to 25mm. The armor thickness of the horizontal deck is 55mm, the thickest part. And the non-vital parts have no armor. The conning tower armor thickness is 90mm. The main turret panel armor is 60mm point power. 12 naval type boilers, 2 steam turbines, twin shaft propulsion. The output is 31,000 horsepower speed. 28 knots. Design value. Members 465. About 110 more on the basis of the wartime establishment. It can be said that this ship will be built and will become the main cruiser of the Romanian Navy. Whether it is to escort future Romanian battleships or perform tasks alone, it can compete with other warships under the same tonnage. And this ship is faster than the most powerful cruiser Count Dazira in the Navy, and it is also much stronger in armor. It's also because the ship is so well designed on paper that the Navy doesn't want to wait any longer. This made it hard for Deputy Edel. He could only lead the workers to urge the workers to build, but the progress was getting too fast. Chapter 481 Varna Shipyard, Part 2. As Deputy Edel kept urging construction, a train pulled into Varna station point. Looking at the scene of the station, the little girl sitting on the train asked curiously, "Dad, will you work here in the future?" The one who was questioned by the little girl was the former employee of the Royal William Shipyard Bern, and the one who spoke to him was his daughter Evelyn. And sitting with him is the whole family, from the eldest son to the youngest daughter plus his couple. Yes, this is where Dad will work in the future. Looking at this strange city, Bern answered his daughter's question with mixed emotions. Leaving Wilhelmshaven, where I have lived for many years, and coming to a city that I have not heard of before, it is inevitable for anyone to sigh. In fact, the relocation of the Royal Dockyard was quicker than he expected. Originally, he thought that it would take a year to start, but he did not expect that after the inspection of the Romanian Navy, the progress was immediately accelerated. Since July, the backbones of them who stayed in the shipyard have been asked to talk one by one. It is nothing more than whether they are willing to work in Romania. When most people face this problem, they choose yes. Who makes it difficult to have a stable job in Germany with a current high unemployment rate in Germany, and who wants to look for Germany again. For Bern, who also has a family to support, nothing is more important than his own family. So after consulting their opinions, the Romanian side specially prepared this train for them. Isn't it a long time since I can't see Rona? I heard her say when she left, they are in a place called Odessa in Romania. Are they far from us? Facing his daughter's question, Bern replied, "It's not too far. It's equivalent to the distance from Wilhelmshaven to Berlin. How far is it to Berlin?" Hearing that her daughter had no concept of distance, Bern touched her hair and replied with a smile, "It's not too far. How far is that?" "It's half a day by train." And with the backbone of their shipyards, in addition to their family members, there is also a batch of equipment loading. They need to be responsible for debugging these devices, and whoever makes these devices the most familiar to them. Here, everyone, get out of the car. A middle-level manager in charge of leading the team came to their carriage and urged everyone loudly. The Bern family, like the others, picked themselves up and saluted, and followed everyone off the train. For a while, a crowd of black people poured into the platform, all of whom were the staff who led the Royal Dockyard team and their families. Everyone was chatting with each other. In order to prevent his children from getting lost, Bernie said loudly to them, "Follow me." At this time, a middle-aged man wearing glasses stood on a high platform built of boxes and said with a tin trumpet, "Everyone has an idea. Everyone has an idea." Seeing that someone was about to speak, the crowd was much quieter, and the middle-aged man was very satisfied with the current situation. So he continued, "I'm Milik, the deputy director of the Varna shipyard, and I'm very welcome to everyone coming to work in Varna. At present, the shipyard has prepared vehicles outside. Everyone lined up to go out one by one. Then we will assign you a place to live. Please rest assured that we are allocating the house according to the number of family members. With just a few words from the deputy director of Milik, the crowd immediately arranged the order automatically. They took their families as a unit and walked out to the exit in turn. Seeing that everyone was in order, Deputy Director Milik was relieved. You must know that these people are the backbone of the current shipyard. If they are lacking, how can the shipyard build warships for the navy? And merchant ship orders will also be grabbed. Although there are many ships in the shipping industry at present, there will always be ships scrapped. No matter how small a mosquito is, it is still meat. Byrne and his group walked out of the station and watched the rows of passenger cars waiting for them to get on. Actually, these cars are not from the shipyard either, but public transport buses in Varna. But who made the current deputy mayor Aldo pay attention to the work of the shipyard? So the deputy director of Milik took the opportunity to call over, which can be regarded as letting these senior German workers feel the importance the shipyard attaches to them. The Byrne family boarded the fourth bus. When the seats were full, the bus drove them towards the port as the family watched vehicles pass through the streets of Varna, and they observed the city, which is different from Wilhelmshaven. On the road, the youngest daughter, Evelyn, sees new things and shouts from time to time, which fills the car with lively life. Arrive. Following the driver's words, they turned from the road into a built residential area. Several passenger cars have been parked here before, and the workers of the shipyard are getting off from the cars with salutes. The Byrne family followed the crowd out of the car. Everyone, each family sends one person to register with me, and then assign housing to you. A young man shouted loudly to them, and two staff members behind him brought a set of tables and chairs. It seems that this is the place for registration. The group immediately lined up. After all, it is about their future housing, and no one wants to lag behind others. Byrne also stepped forward to grab a position, and he found that the registration seemed to be very fast. Just asked the name and brought a few family members. When it was Byrne's turn, he reported his name and several family members, and then the staff gave him a sign with blue number 17. After all the people were registered, the person in charge of allocating immediately began to read the number. The Byrne family was soon read, and under the guidance of the staff, they came to a house. The staff responsible for leading them also told them the situation along the way. You are assigned to the third floor of this building. This house used to be the residence of government workers, but after the new residence was rebuilt last year, it was vacant. At present, this house has been assigned to the shipyard, just in time for you to come and live there here. Immediately, the staff took them to the third floor and opened the door with the key. The staff who led them said, at present, the place has just been cleaned, and there are only a few furniture such as beds and tables. If you want to buy some furniture, there is a market less than 1 kilometer from here. You can go there and buy it. Bernie looked at the somewhat empty room and thanked the staff member. Thank you for your help. You're welcome. You may still be able to help me in the future. After speaking, the staff member left. While Byrne was looking at his new home with the keys, the children couldn't wait to run in and choose their own room. But less ovens, cutlery, lamps and other items. It's better to buy a little wine later, as a celebration of our moving to our new home. And his wife, Filna, calculates the belongings that need to be purchased, as well as the family life. Bernie looked at his wife who was about to make a big purchase, and immediately said, it's all up to you. Then, under the guidance of passers-by, they went to the market to purchase a large number of items. The other shipyard employees who just arrived also go to the market to buy things, but they speak German that only a few people can understand here. But fortunately, there are people from the shipyard with them, which saves them a lot of language troubles. After having their first meal with the family in their new home, they rested early. After all, it is still very tiring to drive here from Germany, and Byrne has fallen asleep thinking about what arrangements will be made for the new shipyard tomorrow. Registered here. Click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. Chapter 480 to the new Prime Minister. There have been a lot of things going on in Romania during this time, but the most important thing is the election of the Prime Minister after Prime Minister Briceanu decided not to participate in the parliamentary elections. The Liberal Party immediately launched Caraccioli as the new Prime Minister. The Conservatives have also introduced their candidate, Bernard from Iasi. Born into a landlord family in Iasi, the Bernard was well educated and joined the Conservative Party at the age of 20. He then became active in the Conservative Party, organizing several propaganda campaigns in Iasi, consolidating the power of the Conservative Party in the region, and also let him into the high-level line of sight. Was rated as a rare publicity talent. In the ensuing time, Bernard has been to the central seat of the Conservative Party from the grassroots level. He has also changed from a high-spirited youth to a white-haired man who knows his destiny, and this year's election he decided to attack the throne of the Prime Minister. To this end, Bernard put forward his own policy one after another, such as ensuring the income of farmers, developing the domestic economy, treating all ethnic groups in the country equally, as well as promoting diplomatic relations between neighboring countries, and so on. The Liberal Party's Caraccioli also proposed a similar policy. However, unlike Bernard, because he has been the Minister of Industry for many years, he has more subdivisions in developing the economy, and more importantly, he is closer to King Edel, and has a good uncle. On an unknown night, the old Prime Minister Stulia entered the palace, and had a secret conversation with King Edel for most of the night. No one knows what they talked about, but after the old Prime Minister came out, he told his nephew confidently that he should try his best to compete for the Prime Minister. The monarch Edel's prestige in the country is not high, but he can't express his position in the election. But although he can't interfere in the election, no one can ignore his role in the election. It's just that the two candidates who have been elected as Prime Ministers cannot see him at this time, but the old Prime Minister can. So this time Caraccioli really wants to thank his uncle. When the elections began, the two Prime Minister candidates stared at the results. They don't have to worry about the fundamentals of the two parties, but neutral votes are very important, and the current Romanian Prime Minister election has the most neutral votes. Because the Romanian Prime Minister is not directly elected, but voters are first elected by localities. At present, Romania's territory has expanded too much, and other newly joined regions have also participated in the election, but the two parties have not yet been able to penetrate into these regions. Among these new areas, the military and the royal family are currently the most influential, and their prestige in China is unbelievably high. So in essence, in the Prime Minister election, Edel is the manipulator behind the scenes. However, this kind of thing cannot be said on the table. After all, the system of constitutional monarchy needs to be maintained. After all, breaking this system will lead to social unrest, and it would be bad if it led to some freaks. Moreover, Edel is also the biggest beneficiary of the current system, so he will not die and break. The vote on the Prime Minister in the parliament was carried out quickly, and the two Prime Minister candidates who were waiting for the result were also smiling and watching the staff count the votes. However, it can be seen from their somewhat stiff expressions that they are also very nervous as the voting continued. The Conservative Party's face became heavier. The Liberal Party's face was much more relaxed, and some people even started to laugh. According to our votes, Mr. Bernard of the Conservative Party currently has 76 votes, while Mr. Caraccioli of the Liberal Party has 157 votes. In the end, the Caraccioli of the Liberal Party won the Prime Ministership. Faced with the staff's announcement, the Liberal Party cheered, rejoicing that the party had won the election. The Conservative Party is sighing, knowing that their party has not had a prime minister for 20 years, and if it continues like this, its influence will fall to a low point. Unlike the people below, Bernard and Caraccioli relaxed after announcing the results. Bernard even came to congratulate his opponent in person. Caraccioli looked at Bernard, who left after congratulating him. He knew that his victory this time was mainly due to His Majesty's help, and how to get along with His Majesty in politics. This will be his most important test, but that's for the future, and for now he just has to cheer for winning the prime ministership. The release of the results of the new prime minister has given people who are concerned about this election a subject. Many domestic media have published Caraccioli's work experience, and wrote about his experience as Minister of Industry and Mayor of Ploiesti. Moreover, these newspapers use the style of spring and autumn to imply that the new prime minister's previous work has promoted the Romanian economy. It is clear that these media are building momentum for the new prime minister to make his ruling foundation more solid. This has the promotion of the Liberal Party in the shadow of Edel. In fact, no matter who is elected, the monarch will deliberately promote the prime minister's governing base. Compared with the domestic praise, foreign media will not be so polite. For example, in the Times, there are comments on the Romanian prime minister election. It's a victory for the Romanian monarchy. That's what the Times said about the election. In their view, Romania's parliamentary monarchy system, the monarch's power is too large, and the parliamentary power is too small to restrict the monarch's actions. This defect makes everything in Romania depend on the monarch's decision, which is very unreasonable. As for the election of the prime minister, the monarch chooses a candidate to assist him, and the election of Caraccioli also shows that it is only a more obedient choice of the electors of the two committees, and this is completely detrimental to the Romanian democratic process, and will make the Romanian political system more and more backward. And this cannot protect the growing bourgeoisie in its country, which requires the country's bourgeoisie to be more vigilant. The Times report drew anger from the Romanian ambassador, who protested to number 10 Downing Street. Ask them to stop the time smearing of the Romanian kingdom. However, the answer given by Downing Street for the Romanian protests is that it is the freedom of speech of the newspapers, and they cannot control it. And the Romanian ambassador's protest gave the Times another chance with another cynic report. However, these reports did not have any effect on Romania, but Edel still read the report. Your Majesty, this is just a result of the British Labour Party's distaste for our country's successive wars with Soviet Russia. And there are quite a few Labour Party members in the Times. Edel listened to Milik's answer and felt relieved. You must know that, after seeing this report, Edel thought that the British diplomatic attitude towards Romania was about to change, so he asked Milik to investigate. The result made him worry for nothing. But that's fine. Anyway, the Labour Party is not the ruling party in the UK, so I have nothing to worry about. After waving the intelligence chief to leave, Edel felt that he needed to pay attention to the attitudes of other countries, especially several major European countries. Dear, click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. Chapter 483 Administrative Restructuring. 1. After Caraccioli was sworn in as Prime Minister, he was required to issue policy guidelines. But before he issued his policy, Caraccioli made a trip to the palace. Because one of his policies requires the full support of His Majesty. In front of Edel stood the new Prime Minister, His Excellency, and he turned over the documents given by the Prime Minister. I didn't expect that you would choose this as your policy. After reading the document, Edel looked up at Caraccioli and said, This is a draft of Romanian administrative restructuring, changing the current Romanian counties to cities. Administrative reform is a difficult task in any era, and this is not the time when the interests of the People's Republic of China were less intertwined in the early days. This is a major operation on the Romanian bureaucracy. Of course it is not simple. Both Edel and Caraccioli knew this in their hearts. Speaking of Romania, there are currently 3 administrative divisions. One is the administrative establishment in Romania before the First World War. It is mainly composed of county-level government agencies, plus a few important regions have established municipal-level government agencies. This was the government structure of Romania at that time. After the end of the war, Romania seized large areas of Austria-Hungary and Russia, and the current administrative structure includes the government structure of Russia and Austria-Hungary. After Romania took over the rule of dispatched officials in the region, it found a problem. That is, the jurisdiction and political structure of the two places are different from the original Romanian state system. Take the current Lviv as an example. Lviv currently has an area of 23,000 square kilometers, and 610,000 people live here. It is 2.8-4.1 times that of the Romanian county government before World War I. And the population is 2.4-4.3 times This will cause a long period of discomfort after the transfer of county officials from the original territory to the new territory, because many previous experiences become useless. Moreover, the current Romanian government has too many county and city level institutions, which is not conducive to the management of the central government. At present, Romania has 27 county and city governments of the former territories, including the territories captured by the former Bulgaria, 16 county and city governments of the former Austro-Hungarian territories, including Transylvania and Eastern Galicia, 14 former Russian one city and state government. Such a variety in number of government agencies make the central government quite troublesome to manage, and it is also easy to cause a decline in the authority of the central government. Therefore, in the draft submitted by Caraccioli, he intends to change these counties, cities, and states into provinces, cities, townships or towns. And with the help of this reform, the authority of the central government is further expanded, and the centrifugal force that the local government may generate is eliminated. However, this work is extremely difficult and requires him to ponder. In addition, currently envisaged in Caraccioli, Romania will set up 17 provincial government agencies and then establish municipal agencies under its subordinates, and finally the townships as the basic administrative units. At present, the more important regions of Romania will set up municipalities, for example, the capital Bucharest, the largest port city Constanta, and Lviv, the future core of heavy industry, may have other names. However, this needs to be based on the actual situation, and in his opinion, only these three regions meet the requirements. But in setting up these provincial institutions, Caraccioli is also mixing sand. Divide the areas where the Romanians occupy the majority, and divide one or two areas of other ethnic groups to form a provincial organization, and try to ensure the dominant position of the Romanians in the vast majority of provinces. It is impossible for the current city and county officials to be satisfied with the establishment of new provincial government agencies, because they had the opportunity to work in the central government before, but now with the addition of a provincial government, they have completely stripped them of the possibility of stepping over to the central government as department leaders. Promotion to the central government must be done at the provincial level, which deprives many officials of the opportunity to work in the central government. Although the opportunity to rise has widened, it will take time. And capable people may be happy about it, but officials are a minority after all. Facing the entire bureaucratic group, even Edel needs to think twice, so this is very difficult to do. However, Caraccioli felt that these changes must be completed, so he could only say with a wry smile, "Your Majesty, there is no way to do this. Prime Minister Bricianu has left these jobs to me, and it can only be done by my successor. Implementation. And I can't continue to push back these work, which will affect the economic development of our country, which is not worth the loss." Hearing what Caraccioli said, Edel felt that what he said was reasonable, and he still needed support. So after thinking about it, Edel said, "Since you have decided on this matter, then I will stand behind you. But you need serious consideration to implement this, and I don't want the government's work to be damaged." After hearing Edel's words, Caraccioli nodded very cautiously. He knew that, as long as he didn't make a big mess, the king would be on his side. "Thank you for your Majesty's support. I will definitely make local governments operate normally, and the establishment of provincial governments is not without benefits for these officials. I will take out some of my posts and reward those who support this reform." After hearing that Caraccioli had plans, Edel also knew that this was the best way to reduce resistance. So he still warned, "This matter, you still need to prepare well before implementing it." "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your understanding." After gaining support from the king, Caraccioli left the palace, sitting in the car remembering his uncle's admonition to him. The old prime minister told him that the current dominance of the Liberal Party in Romanian politics has aroused dissatisfaction from other political parties, and many people are staring at his every move. The administrative reform is likely to lead to counterattacks from other political parties and officials. As a new prime minister, this counterattack will be a huge test. Of course, Caraccioli knew that his uncle had some heavy words, but this kind of restructuring was also an inevitable result. Although his ability to govern is not as good as that of his predecessor Bricianu, he believes that he has a very deep understanding of His Majesty Edel, who is currently ruling the kingdom. who has been with him for more than 10 years. This is an extremely ambitious monarch, and many people may think that His Majesty is satisfied with the current Romanian territory. Only he knew that the territories acquired so far were far from satisfying the monarch's appetite. But now is only the time to digest these territories, and his appetite for the next step is estimated to be either Bulgaria or Hungary. Carachuli needs to follow in the footsteps of this Majesty, solve his problems, and engrave his name in this history. By the way, at least a great politician is still in line with his own identity. Now that he has the support of the king, Carachuli has no reason to back down. After a month of preparation, the announcement on Romania's replanning of provinces, cities, towns was sent to all levels of government. Next, we need to look at Carachuli's political tactics. Dear, click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. Chapter 484. Crap. 1. When the administrative restructuring was carried out in Romania, Callist and others were still collecting such talents and equipment in Germany. Give this document to Dosk immediately, and also request that the technology mining of Siemens be quicker. After Karist handed a document to the secretary and asked him to bring his request to his subordinate, it was obvious that he was somewhat dissatisfied with the work of the subordinate named Dosk. OK. Director. The director mentioned by the secretary is the latest official position of Karist, because his main work is currently in Germany, to introduce technology and equipment. Romania has set up an external department for this purpose, the Rhodes Friendship Exchange Association, and he is the director of the association. This Rhodes Friendship Association, in addition to collecting German talents and equipment, also undertakes its own responsibility for friendly exchanges every year. A lot of funds are invested in exchanges between the two countries, such as inviting well-known scholars to Romania for exchanges, and organizing gatherings of personnel from the two countries and other tedious things. Therefore, Karist actually invaded the positions of many diplomatic ambassadors in Germany, but the main targets were civil organizations and individuals. In addition, some things that are inconvenient for the ambassador to do are also done by him. And the Siemens company in his mouth, of course, is the company founded by Werner von Siemens. As a leader in electrification in Germany, Siemens has a lot of goodies coveted by Romania, so Romania intends to introduce some technology and equipment after the war. It's not going well, though, as Siemens is apparently a little reluctant to sell the technology, because his telephone and telegraph business is not bad at present. I heard that they still have spare energy to invest in the research and development of radios and other electrical appliances. There is no good way for Karist to do this. After all, as a private company, Siemens is a bit out of the ordinary in the current depression in Germany. However, compared with Siemens, another company is much more difficult. Located in a small place called Verahugel in the south of Essen, there is a famous and luxurious manor near the Ruhr River. If the surname Krupp is mentioned in later generations, people will first think of cannons. No way. As Germany's main artillery supplier, the Krupp family has made great contributions to Germany's previous wars. The excellent Krupp cannon is the symbol of German military power. However, after the defeat of Germany, Krupp's life was not easy. Britain and France imposed heavy fines on Krupp, who produced artillery, and demolished Krupp's weapons factories as indemnities for the war. In addition, they confiscated the profits from the war, which greatly hurt Krupp's vitality. Fortunately, the patent fee from Vickers has eased Krupp's predicament. However, in Gustav Krupp's view, this transfer fee is a humiliation to Krupp. It turned out that before the war, the British company Vickers, which made artillery shells, leased the patent rights of Krupp's fuse. After the war, the company paid royalties based on the number of German casualties. This puts Krupp in an embarrassing position of making a fortune from the German war dead. How can it not be regarded as a humiliation? It's just that Krupp needs the money now to ease the company's plight. Today in the Krupp estate, Gustav Krupp and his wife are receiving 2 visitors from Romania. Krupp Manor is well known in Germany. In addition to the Krupp family living here, its luxury is also amazing. There are 227 rooms in the manor, and Krupp's strength is displayed everywhere in the manor. Even the guard room that let them in is built like a small villa. Finally, the locals call the trees of the Krupp Manor Krupp Deep Forest, so you can imagine how big the manor is. Good day, Mr. Krupp. My name is Alex, this is my colleague Boris, and we are staff of the Rhodes Friendship Exchange Association. This time I visit your excellency. There are some things I want to seek your support. Point in the splendid living room. Alex from the Rhodes Friendship Association was introducing himself and his colleagues to the Krupp couple. The two men were assigned a more important role in negotiating with major German companies because of their contribution to recruiting dietitians. The self-introduction of the two did not make the Krupp couple's heart feel much. In essence, they knew exactly what Romania was doing in Germany. Point at this time, Gustav Krupp, the helm of Krupp, said, "I don't know how Krupp can help you. You must know that we have just closed some factories and shipyards." From Gustav Krupp's words, he can hear deep resentment against Britain, France and other countries. In addition to the huge losses suffered by Krupp, he also has personal reasons as Krupp's helm. Gustav Krupp, formerly known as Gustav von Pollen under Halbach, was originally a German diplomat. In 1902, the second-generation president of Krupp, Friedrich Alfred Krupp, committed suicide because of a homosexual scandal that was exposed by the press, leaving only one daughter, Beta Krupp. Big Beta is named after Beta Krupp. She was named. In this day and age, it was unacceptable for a young woman to control Krupp, and as a result Kaiser Wilhelm II personally chose a husband for the young Beta, while Gustav von Pollen under Halbach I was lucky to be selected, the real version of marrying Baphomet and reaching the pinnacle of life. And after their marriage, Wilhelm II approved the fact that Gustav took the Krupp surname. And it turned out that his choice was very wise. Gustav Krupp made many contributions to German ordnance. In addition to the Big Beta, he was responsible for building the big cannon, known as the Cannon of Paris, that bombarded Paris with a range of 82 miles. And the Krupp Germania shipyard it owns built not only battleships for the German Navy, but also many submarines. The two ignored Mr. Krupp's grievances against Britain and France. Because in Germany for many years they know. Point at present, many people in Germany believe that in addition to being stabbed in the back, it sounds like they are talking about Romania. They have also been deceived by Britain, France and other countries. You must know that Britain and France have never said that they will face such punishment for surrendering. This kind of thinking is very popular among the German people. Even the Weimar Republic, which signed the treaty, was not welcome. Point. In order to secure the government's control over the overall situation, Abbott reached an agreement with the military. As long as the military promises to protect the government will not try to reform the military. On the one hand, the agreement symbolized the military's formal recognition of the new government, reassuring the middle class. Although the army was nominally the army of the Republic, it was still entirely controlled by the former imperial army hierarchy. Therefore, the army remains a conservative force, and is independent of the government, and its influence on the Republic is self-evident. Then, as the attitude of Krupp, which has always been a supplier of military weapons, it can be imagined. Point. So Alex said directly, "Your Excellency, our government has always paid attention to its relations with Germany. At the same time, it has not forgotten your country's help in Romania's industrialization. For this reason, His Majesty Edel has repeatedly extended to the suffering German people helping hand. Moreover, the cooperation between my country and Krupp has been very successful before, and the cannons produced in China so far are all from Krupp's craftsmanship." Point. After first complimenting the other party, Alex finally stated his intention. "So our country hopes that this kind of cooperation can continue, and considering the actual situation of Krupp, our country hopes that this kind of cooperation can be deepened. You must know that Krupp is famous for producing heavy artillery, and at present Germany cannot continue to produce this kind of artillery, which is a huge loss for Krupp. Dear, click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. Chapter 485 Krupp, Part 2. It turns out that you are thinking of this after Alex finished talking about his intention. Gustav Krupp looked at the Romanian in front of him and said casually, in fact, he had already anticipated the intentions of these two people. After all, the Rhodes Friendship Association was also well known in Germany, and he knew very well what they were doing. The introduction of talents and technologies is not only done by Romania, but also by the United Kingdom, the United States, France, Italy and other countries, but it is not as blatant as Romania. Gustav Krupp has received several rounds of business representatives from other countries to buy technology, but this is the first time such a semi-official organization has found itself. Seeing Gustav Krupp's unperturbed attitude, as if he was still waiting for the next step, Alex immediately realized that he hadn't made a bid yet. Our country is very interested in Krupp's artillery craftsmanship and technology. Of course, if you think Romania is suitable, we also want submarines and other processing technologies. For this reason, our country is willing to give a price of $30 million. Among them artillery craftsmanship and technology $15 million, $550 for submarine technology, and $9.5 million for other metal processing technologies. Is it expensive to buy Krupp's technology and craftsmanship for $30 million? In fact, it is not expensive at all. It can even be said that, if Krupp had not suffered this catastrophe, let alone $30 million, $80 million or $100 million, Krupp would not have accepted it. Facing the words of the two, Gustav Krupp spit out a word and asked, buyout. Yes, buyout. After being confirmed, Gustav Krupp stood up. Two people, it's getting late, we have other things to do. After speaking, he took his wife Beta Krupp and prepared to leave. In the face of Gustav Krupp's actions, the two knew that the condition was broken and angered the man at the helm of Krupp. At this time, we must make amends, and Alex quickly said, Your Excellency, please wait a moment. Gustav Krupp, who was stopped by Alex's words, turned his head and asked, what else do you two have to do? Facing Gustav's question, Alex quickly turned his head, thinking about which statement he had just angered the other party. Suddenly a thought flashed in his mind. He followed this thought and tried to say, Your Excellency, we are not just here to introduce technology, but to cooperate with Krupp. Gustav, who was attracted by Alex's words, asked casually, what kind of cooperation? Alex said in a meaningful tone, it's a deeper level of cooperation. If you want to hear it, we are willing to tell you in detail in another place. However, this requires absolute confidentiality, and it is best to know as few people as possible. Interested by Alex's words, Gustav took a deep look at him and said, there are several private collections of the Krupp family in my study. If you two are interested, you can come with me. After being invited by Gustav, Alex was basically able to determine the thoughts of the head of Krupp, so he replied cautiously, I'm very happy to share with you. So at the invitation of Gustav Krupp, the two followed the Krupp couple to the study. On the way, Boris pulled Alex with his hand. After the two slowed down, they gave him a look at what are you doing, and Alex made a calm gesture. After entering the study, Gustav asked the butler to reserve the coffee and let him stay outside. After everything was ready, Gustav said, okay, there are only the four of us here. Now you can say what you want to say, but I need to remind you that you'd better think about it carefully. 2. Here we need to introduce ourselves again. My Alex and my colleague Boris are actually not only working for the Rhodes Friendship Association, but also for the royal family. Alex almost shocked Boris when he spoke, but fortunately he covered it up. Fortunately, the Krupp couple did not notice him and were digesting this sentence. However, after digesting what Alex said, Gustav asked, you said you work for the Romanian royal family, what proof do you have? Sorry, there can be no proof for this kind of thing, and the royal family won't admit it. If it doesn't work out, then talk about your cooperation. It is clear that Gustav chose to drop the question for the time being, intending to hear about this so-called cooperation. After sorting out his thoughts, Alex began to speak. Krupp is currently prohibited from engaging in the production of weapons and arms, which has a great impact on Krupp. Aren't the two angry about this? You know Krupp's artillery and warships are famous all over the world, and the basic weapons of all countries have Krupp products or technologies. Yes, what about that? Does your country have the ability to overturn the Versailles Treaty? Also, I forgot, your country is also a signatory of the contract. Gustav's rhetorical question clearly showed his contempt for Romania's strength. This problem is obviously impossible. Even if Edel comes, he still dare not make such crazy actions as for Gustav's rhetorical question. Alex can only answer truthfully, sorry, our country is not capable of doing the possibility that your excellency said. But we can do it in a different way. Speaking after being allowed, Alex expressed his thoughts. Our government can cooperate with Krupp to develop artillery and warships, and half of the research and development funds can be achieved. And the results are shared by everyone. Weapons. We can also get half of the profits on the side of selling technology to the outside world. Alex's words made Boris, who was sitting next to him, start to tremble slightly. To discuss cooperation with Krupp, just rely on the two of them. Doesn't this kind of thing need at least one minister? And he still decides for His Majesty. This is a rhythm of death. Fortunately, the Krupp couple focused their attention on Alex and did not see his abnormal behavior. Your cooperation plan is too unfair to Krupp. The technicians basically rely on us, and you only want to share half of the cost, and you want to share the profits of the operation. This is impossible. Gustav was dissatisfied with the cooperation plan that Alex gave. Alex said from another angle, this is only our preliminary plan. But there is one thing you need to pay attention to, that is, the newly developed weapons are at least used by the Romanian army. This is a profit. I believe you know that Romania is currently how many troops are there. In addition, it can help your company to raise our /U0,020 personnel. You must know that the times are progressing. If you don't engage in a profession for many years, I believe you know how difficult it will be to pick it up again. Regarding Alex's words, Gustav still shook his head and replied, but the conditions you gave are still too low, and it is impossible for our company to accept this kind of cooperation. Then we will listen to your plan. In the face of Alex's inquiry, Gustav thought about it and said, we two sides will jointly open a new company. And we will invest in technology and occupy half of the new company's shares. Your country's land and funds will occupy the other half of the newly developed weapons. Your country's military needs to choose first. After comparing the data, we will have the right to use Germany free of charge, and the right to use other countries will be allocated according to the company's shares. After listening to Gustav's words, Alex shook his head and replied, Your Excellency, your conditions are too harsh for our country, and it is impossible for us to agree to this condition. Then there's nothing we can do. Facing Gustav's words, Alex had to stand up and say, Your Excellency, please think about it. Gustav shrugged in complete disregard for Alex's decision to leave. This is the most favorable condition for our company. So disturbing. After speaking, Alex left with Boris. After leaving the site of the manor, Boris roared angrily, Alex, do you know what you are doing? Looking at the surprisingly angry partner, Alex replied calmly, I know. No, you don't know. The great Mr. Alex was talking and laughing with Gustav Krupp, and they discussed the cooperation between Romania and Krupp, and they came to an agreement. And Mr. Alex being honored for this, and His Majesty's promise that the next Prime Minister will be Mr. Alex. It's all great. Mr. Alex will be the youngest Romanian Prime Minister ever, and he made history. Boris said the last few words had already been shouted out. Facing Boris' merciless irony, Alex had to park the car on the side of the road and explain patiently, Boris, don't do this. You thought about me when you were talking in front of Gustav. We are just subordinates to Lord Calouste, and how dare you pretend to work for the royal family? Do you know what that means? Facing Boris's words, Alex leaned against the window and looked around. I know that pretending to be a royal attaché will be sent back to Romania and put in jail. Hearing that Alex knew the result, Boris's anger rose again. It seems that you know why you dare to pretend. Alex explained patiently, can you just listen to me? Boris, you said, I won't interrupt you. You give a reasonable explanation. After Boris finished speaking, he leaned back in the car seat to see him, waiting for his explanation. Actually, I'm going to test Krupp's attitude towards cooperation with Romania. You can see the refusal attitude of the other party after they proposed to acquire technology and equipment. But I was wondering why he would refuse this. You must know the price at present. It is not at all bottom. That's why I thought that crap attaches more importance to these technologies than we thought. The emphasis on these weapons technologies shows that some people in Germany are currently very dissatisfied with the Versailles Treaty. They want to overturn the Versailles Clause. Facing Boris's words, Alex replied, "Of course, how many people in Germany don't want to end this clause now? But they don't just want to, they have plans to do so." Following Alex's train of thought, Boris continued, "If you want to overthrow the Treaty of Versailles, you must prepare armaments. This is impossible in Germany, and the allied countries' infantry team will capture them all. So it can only be abroad, and Romania has the strength to shield them from the wind and rain. So you are sending a message to them that Romania is willing to carry out these secret cooperation with Germany." Yeah, that's what I thought. But for Director Karst, how should we explain it? Leave it to me. How is this possible? I'm your partner at the same time in the Krupp estate. The Krupp couple were also talking about them. I don't think these two were sent by the Sigmaringen family. Especially when Alex said they were sent by the royal family. I noticed that his colleagues also had shocked expressions, although he covered it up. Not bad. In the study, Beta Krupp was discussing two daring fellows with her husband. Beta Krupp was nurtured by her father, Friedrich Alfred Krupp, for many years. Anyone who treats her as an ordinary woman will suffer a lot. To his wife's words, Gustav Krupp replied, "I know, I sensed it when they said who they were. Then you have to negotiate with them for a long time. Because Romania is also one of my chosen targets, I can just take this opportunity to test the attitude of the other party. You must know that Krupp is famous for its artillery in the world, and now it is forced to engage in other industries. How can this be worthy of the previous Krupp family members?" Hearing her husband mentioning her father and ancestors, Beta Krupp softened affectionately. "At present, Romania is begging us, and it will not inform the allied countries, so it can also test their courage." That's exactly what I thought. Dear, click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 486, The New Situation in Bulgaria, Part 1. Ed still doesn't know what the two daring fellows did, but Romania's neighbors are having a hard time, so he knows it. Compared with the thriving Romania, Bulgaria is so sad. As the initiator of the Balkan War and the allied camp of World War I, Bulgaria has had a lot of hardships in recent years. Especially after the end of World War I, life in Bulgaria became even more difficult. In particular, the Peace of Neuilly about the defeat in World War I made Bulgaria even worse. According to the terms of the Treaty of Neuilly, Bulgaria was required to cede northwestern Macedonia to the Kingdom of Serbia and half of Thessaloniki and Western Thrace to Greece. The loss of Thessaloniki and Western Thrace left Bulgaria without access to the Aegean Sea. This clause cost Bulgaria 21% of its territory and 24% of its population. More importantly, the Aegean coast is a rich area. After being ceded to Greece, it will be a heavy blow to Bulgaria's economy. In addition, Bulgaria also needs to make financial compensation to both countries. Among them, Bulgaria needs to compensate the Kingdom of Serbia with food and materials worth $150 million, and Greece also needs to make $170 million in compensation for food and materials. The compensation period is 15 years. In addition, in order to limit Bulgaria's armed forces, to prevent it from threatening neighboring countries, the Bulgarian army was also limited to 30,000 people. In the face of the numerous clauses imposed on him, the Bulgarian economy, which was already unable to support it, completely collapsed. Its currency unit, the lev's exchange rate, Alexander Jankov, fell from 1 to 1 Romanian leu in 1905 to 1.54 to 1 before World War I. After the end of World War I, the exchange rate between lev and lei dropped to 15.47 to 1, and the signing of the Treaty of Neuilly made lev drop to 24.15 to 1. During this period, the savings of a large number of Bulgarians vanished, making Bulgaria a little turbulent. The collapse of the domestic financial system has bankrupted a large number of factories, and workers are completely out of work. The food and other agricultural products needed for compensation have greatly reduced the income of farmers. Many farmers are insolvent and can only wander in the countryside and cities. Unemployed workers and peasants have caused the deterioration of the law and order. This year, the crime rate in Bulgaria has increased by 246%, which has caused the concern of the propertied class. The deteriorating economic security situation in Bulgaria has caused many people to vent their dissatisfaction. Alexander Zankov, the prime minister, has been accused by many people of being inappropriate in private. In addition to accusing the government of misconduct, the Bulgarian people also found that there was a good place, that is, the former Bulgarian territory occupied by Romania. There are still 300,000 to 400,000 Bulgarians living on this 20,000 square kilometer land. Some are smuggled in by the outbreak of war, and some are forced by life. These Bulgarians in Romania are currently enjoying Romania's war dividends. Many of their politicians were sent to new territories, and merchants made money there. Although ordinary people are slightly worse, the construction of new territories still makes them rich. Because it was ceded by Romania for a short time, less than 10 years, the connection with Bulgaria was not blocked. Therefore, the living conditions, public security conditions, and economic situation in the region are continuously presented to the Bulgarian domestic people. Compared with the chaos in their own country and the living conditions of Bulgarians in neighboring countries, many Bulgarians feel lost. Originally, in their opinion, these Bulgarians who remained in Romania should be oppressed, always expecting the motherland to restore them. Bulgarian domestic newspapers also have a credit. It is a pity that these Bulgarians in Romania live better than themselves and earn more than themselves. Even in politics, they have the same power as Romania, and they are not oppressed. How could this not disappoint them? After comparing the two sides, some people became angry and tried to make Bulgaria regain its position in the Balkans. Some people yearn for it, wishing to be a Romanian citizen. We don't care about those strong Bulgarians, but these longing Bulgarians have aroused some people's ideas. Don't think that the habits of a nation will never change. There are many people who use economic interests to lure people to change. It is not a joke that there is no way to betray the country. In Tarnovo, a city that once fought against Romania, some people quietly held a party here. In the Vocari district of Tarnovo, where the Bulgarian middle class lives mainly. The name Borks is relatively well known in Tarnovo because he published several articles in local newspapers that pointed directly at the government's shortcomings. His sharp writing and slightly humorous style made many people like to read his articles. And he also became a little known intellectual in the region, and by doing so he barely counted as a cultural celebrity. At his home today, a small cultural salon is also underway to celebrate his return from travel. Those who can participate in his cultural salons and cultural celebrities he does not participate in much, also like to criticize the government's misconduct. Everyone, thank you for participating in this cultural salon. Here, I hope everyone can speak freely and seek a better tomorrow for Bulgaria. As the owner, Borks took the lead in toasting and said the opening remarks no problem. Who doesn't know that Borks Cultural Salon is the most free? That's right. Under the leadership of others, the others present spoke up. After a glass of wine, someone said, "How was your trip, Borks?" "Yes, only by looking around can you see the gap between us and others." After sitting down in a comfortable way, Borks began to talk about his experience. "I drove all the way to Constanta by car, and only after crossing the border did I realize the huge gap between Bulgaria and Romania. In Romania, peasants basically use machinery. As far as I know, the peasants who use machinery are alone 3 to 5 hectares can be cultivated, which is many times more than Bulgaria." At this time someone said, "That's not because the food in Romania is cheaper." Yes, domestic food prices in Romania are 5-10% lower than in Bulgaria. After answering someone's question, Borks continued, You think Romanian food is cheaper than Bulgaria, which can make people's lives better. And their workers' wages are much higher than ours. Seeing that his friends were attracted by his topic, Borks was even more proud to share his knowledge. A skilled worker in Romania can earn 160 to 180 lei per month, and one person can meet the needs of a family before he earns it, which is much better than ours. And Romania's public transportation is also very developed and very cheap. Ordinary people can ride. If you are early in the morning, you can see a lot of people waiting on the platform for these vehicles. These public transportation vehicles connect every part of the city and shorten the distance between them. As Borks spoke, the latest Romanian situation kept coming up in front of them, especially hearing that Romania has not only newspapers, radio, but also various cultural events. And in Borquez's story, he also participated in several Romanian cultural salons, and those Romanian celebrities were very polite to him. In short, in his words, Romania's performance is thriving, the economy is dynamic, the people live and work in peace and contentment, and the soldiers defend their homes and the country. Newspapers are filled with job postings, and every now and then you'll find an article on Romania's new all-time high. It just makes them yearn physically and mentally, and they can't wait to travel in person and write down these experiences for the public to see. Dear, click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. Chapter 487. The New Situation in Bulgaria, Part 2. So did you find anything bad about them in Romania? When Borks was about to say something, a rash voice interrupted him. Borks looked at it with a loud voice, and then said with a smile, Lidkalf, of course there is. After all, Romania is not a paradise. How can there be a lack of bad places? Their electricity is not enough. From time to time, there is a power outage. I heard that the Romanian government is building power plants in various places to meet the surge in the number of factories. In addition, their efficiency in going to the government is reduced. I heard that it is because of Romania's establishment of a province. Although Borks said it was a disadvantage, the people present did not think it was a disadvantage. Because the increase in factories is not enough, this is not a reflection of Romania's increasing national strength. And the province is also due to the expansion of Romania's territory. If so, they would like to build a province every day in Bulgaria. As Borks recounted, the Lidkalf couldn't help but ask, isn't there anything else that's bad? I've been there for a limited time, and I haven't found anything bad. Maybe you can go there for a while longer, and you may be more careful than me. In the face of Lidkalf's successive inquiries, Borks couldn't help it. In the face of Lidkalf's successive problems, Borks became dissatisfied. What does this guy mean today? Forget that I'm the one running this salon. In the face of Borks' counter-stab, Lidkalf stood up and gestured to everyone and said, I'm sorry, I'm a little sick. I'm sorry. After speaking, he left under the watchful eyes of a group of people. As for Lidkalf's rude behavior, Borks' face suddenly became very ugly. At this time, someone defended. I heard that Lidkalf had his family killed in the war with Romania, so he was somewhat hostile to Romania. Borks, who got under the steps, also took the opportunity to say, it's no wonder, I thought he was dissatisfied with my salon party. Let's toast the brave soldiers who died. Cheers. The atmosphere was pulled back by Borks. Although Lidkalf has been put on the list of no friends in his heart, Borks knows that everyone's attention needs to be turned around. But continue to say that his travels in Romania are definitely not enough, but he can start with Lidkalf, who left. After realizing it, Borks made a guilty expression and continued, I didn't know anything about what happened to Lidkalf before. If I had known, I could not have said that. My heart felt sympathy for what happened to Lidkalf, and I'm here to bless his family in heaven. For Borks' sincere apology, the people present agreed. Borques, you can't blame you for this. After all, you don't know it either. That's right. I can't blame you for this, and you are too modest. So under everyone's comfort, Borks mastered the rhythm of the scene again. In between, he said, actually, for the war between the two countries. I think it can be completely avoided. His words aroused everyone's interest, and one of them asked, how can we avoid this? We must know that Romania is going to cede 4 counties in the northeast of our country, which is unacceptable to us. Faced with the question raised by someone, Borks said confidently, you all got the news from Bulgarian newspapers. Borks' words made it difficult for everyone to answer. After all, a lot of information about a war involving the Balkan countries was not made public. At that time, Bulgaria's propaganda was that Romania, with the support of the two countries, launched an evil invasion of Bulgaria. Only later did news come out that it was Romania who started the war in anger, after blackmailing the 4 northeastern counties. Seeing everyone's tacit attitude, Borks said with a heavy tone, according to the information I have received, in fact, in the war against the Ottomans, the two countries had an agreement before. In order to get Romania's support and compensate the Romanians in Macedonia, our country will cede 4,000 square kilometers of territory in Dobrich. After the war, the government refused to implement this agreement, so the end result was a huge loss for Bulgaria. People are like that, only when they lose more, you will regret your previous preoccupations. So when the people present heard the shocking news of Borks, they caused a lot of scolding. Damn, Jeshov ruined Bulgaria. I really don't know what the government thought at the time. Don't the people in the government have no brains? They dare not implement this kind of agreement. Looking at the successive scoldings against the government, Borks took the opportunity to say, the government is responsible for this, but I heard that it was mainly the king who failed to pass. Borks's words made the scene even more fueled, and someone immediately scolded, are the people of the Kohari family pig brains? Look at what they have done. Because they do not implement the agreement with Romania, let the people. Half of the results of the war with the Ottomans were lost, and the wrong team in the first war caused Bulgaria to lose all the results. These places are precious territories of Bulgaria, all of which were taken by the arrogant His Majesty Ferdinand. Lost. Obviously, what this guy said is out of line, but who cares about this? Someone even said, look at the monarch of our neighboring Romania, whose territory has more than tripled under his rule. This is the good luck of others. Look at our Bulgaria, the gap is really too big. At this time, someone said casually, it's all to blame for the people in the Bulgarian parliament at that time. The king they invited was too wasteful. If you directly invited Karolai at that time, wouldn't it be possible for Bulgaria to grow together? Everyone knows more about the invitation of the Bulgarian parliament to the Romanian king Karolai. So someone said, isn't it rejected at that time? And this man obviously knew something that everyone didn't know, and he said with a shriveled mouth, that's because the conditions were too poor. The parliament required Karolai to live in Sofia for half a year every year, and others were required to accept the parliament. How can someone say what the Romanian king can say? How could he agree to such a rude request? In the face of this revelation, the others present were very embarrassed. Who knew that the choice of the monarch between the two countries would cause such a huge difference? At this time, someone complained, if I had known this was the case, it would have been better to ask Karolai to be the monarch of Bulgaria. But the problem is that now Bulgaria already has a monarch, and it is impossible for the Romanian royal family to come over and serve as the king of Bulgaria. This is not necessarily. As long as the members of the Kohari family are willing to abdicate, then this matter is still possible. In their discussion, the difference between the two countries of Paul has been biased all the way to the point of changing the king. At this time, someone couldn't help but say, is it appropriate for us to discuss this kind of thing? What's wrong with this? We are thinking about the Bulgarian people. If you look at the current domestic situation, not only is the gap between Romania and Romania widened, but even the CE countries are bullied to the end. You must know the Bulgarian kingdom before us. But the leaders of the Balkans, anyone can be bullied now, and you can stand it. In the face of pointing in Bulgaria's environment, this one finally fell silent. So at the Borks home, a bunch of bold literati discussed how to replace the king. And they also set up a loose organization for this, the Power Council. However, there are no rules and regulations, and they just gather together from time to discuss the current and political disadvantages of Bulgaria, and occasionally discuss expanding their influence. So a loose organization that has never appeared in history has entered the stage of history, and maybe it can really succeed in the future. Dear Click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. Chapter 488. Courtois retired. The newly emerging powerhouse in Bulgaria did not arouse Ed's idea. After all, it was just a loose organization established by a few literati point, and what the two daring fellows did finally reached his ears. I really didn't expect that there are such talents under Karist point. This was Edel's first reaction after seeing the report sent by the former captain of the guard point. However, unlike Edel's understatement, Karist, as its leader, was not very polite to those two guys. Suspend the two people and temporarily detain them, and then report the whole matter to Edel. After all, this matter is related to His Majesty, and he cannot make a decision privately. Point. Looking at what Karist seemed to be quite serious, Edel didn't think it was so serious. This may also be different from the perspective of the two of them. Not only has Karist served as the captain of the bodyguard before, but others pay more attention to out-of-the-box behavior. Since they claim to be sent by me, then give them this power. But if the negotiation with Krupp is unsuccessful this time, they will be imprisoned on the charge of posing as special envoys. Edel thought about it for a while and made a decision on this matter. Of course, this kind of arbitrariness cannot be tolerated. But Edel saw that they could talk to Krupp to this level, and it was also very capable. It can be regarded as cherishing talents and intending to give them a chance to redeem their sins. If you can't do it, of course, you can also give others a warning. Point. Considering that they need to negotiate, Eda continued, in addition, the bottom line of the negotiation between my country and Krupp is that Krupp will invest in technology and equipment, and we will invest money and land to build a new weapons factory. The shares of this factory are side by side, half, and we will give up to 50 million lei in research and development funds, the results of which must be attributed to this new factory, and the weapons purchased by the German and Romanian military will be exempt from patent fees. When Eda finished talking about the new plan given by Romania, the guard in charge of recording immediately took it and prepared to send a message to Germany. Point. The new captain of the bodyguard, Horia, came in and reported, Your Majesty, Marshal Courtois is here. Point. Let Your Excellency the Marshal come in. Point. When Eda heard that Courtois was visiting, he immediately prepared to meet the old coach. Point. The new captain of the bodyguard was recently promoted by Edel, mainly considering that Karist has been busy with German affairs, and it is difficult to be around him, and the position of the head of the guards, who is in charge of the side, can't be lacking all the time. So the stable Horia was promoted among the guards. Good day, His Majesty. As soon as the old marshal came in, he saluted Edel. Point. Your Excellency Marshal, don't do this. Edel immediately stepped forward to support him. After all, the old marshal was old, and he didn't want the other party to make mistakes. After supporting the other party, Edel asked, what's the matter with the marshal's visit this time? Courtois, who was supported by Edel, was really in trouble, and he said, Your Majesty, this time I'm here to ask for permission to retire. Point. Hearing Courtois's words, Eda said, Marshal, you can still work for Romania for many years. Why are you thinking of retiring? Point. Courtois's retirement had long been rumored in the military. However, few people know that Courtois has been rejected by Edel several times, and there is no following point. But this time Courtois was obviously different. I saw him reply to Edel, who kept him, Your Majesty, I'm old and don't know much about new things. If I continue to stay in the Ministry of the Army, I will have a negative impact on the military. Upgrading creates a nuisance. In fact, there are still some things he didn't say. At present, the three giants in the army belong to him. It is only a name, because the generals he represents are all officers from the Carol era. These people are basically retired from retirement, and those who switch to other places switch to other places. The young and promising officers in the army, who are still close to him, also caused his influence in the army to decline drastically. Point. As a veteran who has worked in the army for many years, can he still not know what to do at this time? Therefore, retirement is the best way for him at present. After all, he can't wait until everyone else hates him before thinking of quitting. And as the first Marshal of Romania, Courtois is also beautiful enough, and he can't rely on it. Although Courtois has many reasons, his retirement depends on Ed's approval. Facing the retirement of the old Marshal, Edel didn't quite want to agree. Marshal Courtois, the army can't be without you at the moment. The War Department has your valuable experience and can stabilize the inexperienced aggressive situation in the army. So can you think about it again? Eder also has his own reasons for disagreeing with Courtois' retirement. Quite simply, he has yet to find a replacement for Courtois. If the old coach was to retire like this, there would not be enough prestige people in the army to form a new big three with present and Fried. At present, among the generals in the group with Ploiesti, no one who has been suppressed by him can emerge. In the new generation of generals, Lieutenant General Mandiv and Lieutenant General Ankada lack sufficient prestige and credit. You must know that Admiral Ploiesti, who is currently in the limelight in the army, only emerged because of the Balkan War, and only gained a firm foothold in the subsequent World War I with outstanding military exploits. It was also in the two wars between the Soviet Union and Russia that made him the most convincing general of the Romanian army. And Lieutenant General Mandiv and Lieutenant General Ankada both lack the credit of standing alone. Who can convince any of them to become a giant? Although Edel is in trouble, this time it seems that the old coach is determined to retire, and he continues, Your Majesty, it may be because I didn't pay attention when I was young. At present, I'm really not fit to continue working. I hope your majesty can scale my difficulties so that I can enjoy my old age. In the face of Courtois having already said this, Edel couldn't persuade him any longer. After all, the old coach has dedicated his life to the army, and it would be inhumane to ask the other party to keep doing it. So Edel can only say, since the marshal has considered it, then I accept your resignation. However, the old marshal will do his job well in the next days, and wait for me to arrange for someone to take over. Hearing that Edel agreed to the request, Courtois replied gratefully, Thank you, your majesty. Edel felt a headache after sending off Marshal Courtois. The promise was easy, but it would be a question of who would take over. However, the news that the resignation of Marshal Courtois was approved soon spread in the army, and many people were surprised by this belated news. However, there are already smart people who want to be the next director of education, and this will be another battle. The actions in the palace quickly dispelled their thoughts. In the subsequent adjustment of the army duties, the post of Minister of the Army was taken over by Marshal Ploiesti, and the post of Chief of General Staff was taken over by Admiral Ploiesti. The position of Education Director, that everyone is concerned about, is temporarily represented by Lieutenant General Mandiv. The news made Lieutenant General Mandiv ecstatic, but whether he can be turned into a regular depends on his performance. As for Lieutenant General Ankada, he also got an opportunity in this adjustment. He will serve as the commander of the First Army formed by Romania. This is an attempt by the Romanian military for the tactical unit of the future force. In the military's vision of future warfare, the division level, as a tactical unit, may not be able to do so. So they experimented whether they could form a higher level tactical unit, so the army level was born under such circumstances. As the first military level commander, Lieutenant General Ankada still maintained a peep on the military giants. Click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. Chapter 489. The plan of the new Chief of Staff. The adjustment of the Romanian army was quick, and soon after Edel gave the order, the adjusted generals took office one after another as the new Chief of General Staff. Admiral Ploiesti finally took the position he had long dreamed of. In the military system, passed down to Germany, the role of the General Staff is, of course, clear to Farid. Of course, the current German General Staff has been renamed the Troop Bureau, and the basic replica of the Romanian General Staff has become the most authentic German General Staff. Admiral Farid, who became Chief of the General Staff, naturally hopes to have a new look. So after serving as Chief of the General Staff for a month, Ploiesti came up with his first improvement plan for the staff. Prime Minister is to increase the research and development of new weapons, such as tanks, armored vehicles, machine guns, artillery, aircraft and other new equipment research and development work point. Because in Ferit's view, the main threat to Romania in the future is the Red Soviet Russia. At present, the Romanian army can form a crush on Soviet Russia, and Soviet Russia will definitely correct it in the future. After all, Soviet Russia has inherited Russia's vast territory and abundant resources. In the future, it will definitely not be the opponent of Soviet Russia in terms of quantity, so it must be suppressed in terms of quality. Therefore, Romania cannot delay the development of new weapons, especially for new tanks and aircraft. It should be the top priority of research and development. There is currently no independent air force in Romania. To this end, he also specifically found Hoffman to discuss the research and development direction of future tanks. After communicating with Major General Hoffman, Friat ordered the development of the next generation of Romanian tanks. The standard is a total weight of 18 tons. The body armor should reach 40 mm. The turret armor should be 50 mm. Equipped with a 47 mm tank gun and 2 machine guns, the speed needs to reach 40 km per hour. The maximum range is 250 km, and it is convenient for maintain. In particular, the failure rate of new tanks must be reduced to 1 repair every 60 km. In order to give sufficient time to the R-U-1026D department. The R-U-1026D period is 3 years in terms of performance. It is not much improved from the Jackal tanks currently equipped in Romania, but this tender is mainly focused on reliability, mainly because the failure rate of Romanian Jackal tanks is still high. Don't look at the majesty of the Jackal tank. When it fought against the Soviet Union, it was just based on its huge repair work point at present. The armored brigade commanded by Hoffman has a maintenance configuration of 1 maintenance class for every 4 tanks. It is conceivable how high its failure rate is. Obviously Hoffman was about to collapse by the failure of this big guy, so he asked for improved reliability point in addition. For the research and development of new aircraft, Friat also made a request. For the fighter, the speed is 210 km per hour, the range is 450 km, and the new aircraft is required to have a good turning radius to facilitate fighting. At present, there is only one aircraft manufacturing company in Romania that can take over Ferit's plan, that is, the Condor Aircraft Factory. As the main aircraft manufacturer in Romania, Condor Aircraft Factory currently gathers the best aircraft design talents in Romania. At present, Henry Condor and Ferit, who are only under 40 years old, still has excellent design ability. And at the end of the war, they also imported technology from Britain, France, Germany and other countries to try to build the best aircraft. However, I heard that the two of them have focused on the transportation of the aircraft recently, but I don't know if they can still complete the target of His Excellency Admiral. As for artillery and machine guns, Friat also issued orders to develop new ones. Among them, on the machine gun, he is not too satisfied with the Madsen currently used in Romania. The main reason is that Madsen has a complex structure and high cost, especially because it not only has many parts, but also has many small parts. It is quite complicated to disassemble and assemble with special tools. Many faulty Madsen machine guns on the battlefield can only be abandoned first and then repaired slowly after they are finished. This is very inappropriate for future wars in Ferit's view. In his opinion, Romania's new machine guns in the future must require early ability to facilitate battlefield maintenance, and then consider the rate of fire and range point in terms of heavy machine guns. Ferit hopes that the new heavy machine guns can reduce weight while maintaining the rate of fire and power. The MG08 heavy machine gun currently used in Romania weighs 62 kilograms, including the H-shaped gun mount, and the gun body weighs 26.4 kilograms, which is very unfavorable for rapid deployment. Friat hopes that the new gun can reduce the total weight to about 40 kilograms, so that it can be easily disassembled and held by 2 people to keep up with the army's attack point. As for the development of artillery, Friat only made one request: lighter weight, longer range, and faster deployment. The main reason is that the current Romanian artillery research and development capabilities are too weak, and it is not easy for Ferit to put forward too high requirements. In addition to the emphasis on the research and development of new weapons, Ferit is more concerned about the current Romanian divisional restructuring. According to the combat situation of the only 24th Division, that has changed its organization, the current division-level troops of this 3 infantry regiment system performed well in battle. Especially in terms of response speed and deployment, it is much better than the current mainstream 2 brigades and 4 regiments. Moreover, according to the analysis of its combat by the General Staff, such a 3-regiment division-level unit is not only conducive to deployment, but also reduces the number of personnel, and its combat effectiveness is basically not reduced, just reducing the deployment time and the number of personnel is enough to make Fried determined to proceed with the reorganization of the army. Because at present, a standard 2 brigades and 4 regiment division has about 17,000 people, while a new 3 regiment division has about 15,000 people, mainly due to the reduction in the number of frontline infantry, but an increase in technical arms. There is a gap of 2,000 people, which is a large amount of personnel expenses. If the current troop formation is still maintained, this is equivalent to a disarmament of nearly 13%, and the money saved can be fully subsidized for weapons research and development. Major expenditures in the current military budget fall into several broad categories. The first category is personnel allowances and living expenses, which are also the most important expenses of the military. The military's clothing, food, housing, and wages, or allowances, need to be counted in it. The second category is training costs, mainly the consumption of weapons and ammunition. The third category is the purchase cost of weapons. The purchase cost of weapons for the third brother in later generations has never been understood, and so many soldiers can still squeeze out so much money to buy weapons. The fourth category is the weapon research and development expenses that everyone likes to hear among them. The first type of expenditure occupies the bulk of the military. Taking Romania as an example, its personnel expenditure has always accounted for more than 40% of the total budget. The cost of training varies according to the training intensity of each country, among which Romania has remained at around 18%. And the cost of weapons procurement, because of the previous war, Romania is also maintained at around 30%. The current reduction after the war is greatly reduced. However, Romania has less than 10% of weapons research and development, mainly due to the lack of military industry research and development capabilities. However, with the introduction of German talents, it is believed that there may be a substantial increase in the future. The current division-level restructuring in Romania can also be said to reduce personnel costs, and also reduce training costs in disguise. If there are fewer people, the training costs will be less. Therefore, in the face of the military restructuring plan that will redistribute between 6-7% of military expenditures, how could Fried not be enthusiastic? However, it is changed, but it is impossible to change all of them in one go, because the extra officer placement will test him. Therefore, Fried plans to spend about 5 years to gradually change the army structure. However, how many people need to be scolded and how many people's jobs need to be broken, he can't care. But everything has to be within control. Dear, click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. Chapter 490 RK Company. While Admiral Fried was carefully dealing with the issue of army restructuring, Alex and Boris, who had regained their freedom, came to Krupp Manor again. For the previous experience of dying, the two feel very sorry. Suspended and imprisoned, awaiting orders from the king. Karast's series of actions made them realize how big a mistake they had made. Fortunately, His Majesty was magnanimous and spared them for the time being, otherwise the two would have returned to prison in Romania. So this time the two were more disciplined. After coming to the study room for the last meeting, the two took out the documents signed by Edel. Facing the actions of the two, the Krupp couple looked at each other, as if to say that it seemed that this time it was a real joke. After retracting the document, Alex said with a serious expression and serious eyes, "I wonder what the conditions given by our country were considered by Krupp." Facing Alex's words this time, Gustav Krupp replied cautiously, "We Krupp have considered it, and the conditions given by your country before are still not enough. However, considering Romania's goodwill, so we can give some concessions under the existing conditions. Gustav's words brought a sigh of relief to the two first-time negotiators. This is a signal from Krupp that it is willing to cooperate with Romania. However, the specific conditions need to be discussed, but if they can continue to talk, it means that their work is effective, so they quietly listen to the conditions given by Gustav. Our condition is that we will invest in technology and some equipment, and occupy half of the new company, while your country will invest in land and funds, and occupy the other half. The newly developed weapons will also be owned by this new company, and if the two militaries want to use it, they can buy it from the company. If other companies want to use it, they need the right to use it. The profits will also be distributed by the new company according to shares. Finally, Gustav said, in addition, the new company must meet the annual production capacity of 1,000 artillery pieces and their parts. In fact, for Gustav to greatly reduce the conditions, in addition to the factors he said, there are also several other reasons why the previous choices were not suitable. Krupp previously chose the Netherlands and Sweden as Krupp's secret research and development sites. Among them, the Netherlands has the most friendly attitude towards Krupp. After all, the relationship between the Netherlands and Germany has always been very good, but because its location is too close to Britain and France, it is not suitable as a secret artillery research and development base. As for Sweden, it is far away from Britain and France, but the relationship between Germany and Sweden is relatively general, and Sweden's neutral position will not help Krupp cover up much, which makes Gustav also a little concerned. As for the future cooperation between Soviet Russia and Germany, it is completely out of Krupp's consideration. For the Red regime, Gustav was very hostile from the bottom of his heart. Compared with the Netherlands and Sweden, conditions in Romania are much better. The distance is far, or located in the Black Sea. The relationship is good, to be verified, and the most important thing is that Romania can cooperate with the royal family. As the leader of the Krupp company, Gustav is still relatively familiar with the situation in Romania. The power of the current Romanian royal family, the Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen family, is still relatively clear. Doing business with the royal family in Romania is the most profitable, and in terms of confidentiality, which Gustav values most, it can be said that Romania has the most advantage, so he is also the most satisfied with the choice of Romania. However, as a qualified businessman, Gustav certainly needs to strive for maximum profit for himself. So he needs to understand Romania's bottom line as much as possible, and the two people in front of him have become his tools. As for Gustav's last sentence, it was set up to prevent Romania from only developing and not producing. This also has his little thought. Because Krupp can't continue to produce artillery at present, and Gustav obviously wants to retain the backbone workers, he added one at the end to meet the possibility that Krupp may return to Germany to continue production on a large scale in the future. After hearing the new conditions given by the other party, Alex thought for a while and replied, "Thank you for your interest in Romania. But for this new condition, either party still believes that the gap is relatively large. However, in order to reflect our sincerity, we also intend to modify some of the conditions." Alex then said in a word-by-word tone, "Our new condition is that Krupp will invest in technology and equipment, and we will invest capital and land to build a new weapons factory. The shares of this factory are half, and we will give up to 20 million lei in research and development funds, and the results must be attributed to this new factory, and the weapons purchased by the German and Romanian military will be exempt from patent fees." Hearing the new conditions offered by Alex, Gustav immediately shook his head and replied, "No, this condition is unfair to us. Our company has invested too much. You must know that equipment and technology are very important to a company. It is too important, especially Krupp has the best artillery technology. Romania only needs to invest land and funds to share this technology. It is too unfair to us, and it is also a denial of the hard work of tens of thousands of Krupp workers." After hearing Gustav's dissatisfaction, Alex continued, "I don't deny that Krupp is currently the most advanced technology, but you also need to consider the actual situation. At present, only Romania has the ability to ensure that Krupp can continue to secretly develop new artillery. You must know that once Germany rearmament in the future, its profit will be the most favorable for Krupp. It can be said that it is the best choice for Krupp to be able to help your company through the difficulties in Romania. Facing Alex's remarks, Gustav smiled and replied, "It's a pity that you don't become a businessman." Alex did not respond to Gustav's praise. You are right. If Krupp's technology is put on for a few more years, it is likely to fall behind. However, in addition to Romania, our company can also cooperate with other countries. It can even be secretly developed by itself. As long as not in the country, or in places beyond the reach of Britain and France, such as the Netherlands, Spain or Sweden, Norway and other countries. But it's not the best. Facing the counterattack of the young man in front of him, Gustav said with a smile, "Yes, this is indeed not the best. But don't forget the two. I'm a businessman, not a politician. As long as the benefits outweigh the risks, I have every reason to go. Do it. Of course, if Romania is good, why don't I work with you?" After hearing Gustav's words, the two realized that they were negotiating with a businessman. The other party is also right. As long as the businessman has a good profit, he certainly won't estimate the others, but for some reason, Alex always feels that something is wrong. Okay, that's it for today's negotiation. You already know our conditions, so how about we talk about it today? Facing Gustav's words, Alex, who has no clue at the moment, just nodded in agreement. So today's negotiation is over. On the way back, Alex suddenly braked the car and the unprepared Boris almost flashed his waist. What are you doing, Alex? Hahaha, I thought about it. Facing the anger of his colleague, Alex laughed at this time. What did you think of seeing the colleague who seemed to have lost his madness? Boris asked curiously. Alex grabs his colleague's shoulder, like he's taking a chance. I thought about why Gustav who said this. He is deceiving us. A pure businessman who went to TM. He is a diplomat. He can't only consider commercial interests, and his way of thinking is habitually adding politics. So what? So we are his only target, because Romania is currently the country with the best secret research and development in Germany. It's the problem that they don't choose us. Alex, who wanted to understand, was refreshed at this time, feeling like a hunter catching a fox. The next day, when Gustav once again said conditions in Romania were too low, Alex smiled. "Your Excellency, there is no doubt about the importance of Krupp to the German military, and our country and the military have always had close relations. So I hope Krupp can think about it for the military and stop worrying about these details. After all, Krupp grew up with the German army." Alex's words. Boris listened to the clouds. How the good negotiations involved the German military. Boris doesn't understand. It doesn't mean Gustav didn't hear Alex's intention. I saw him frown a little and said, "Who does this mean? What our superiors mean?" Listening to the conversation between the two, Boris was a little lost. Isn't their superior Karist? Why didn't he know what the director said? "You two, please rest first and let me think about it." Okay. Gustav finished speaking and left with his wife. After only two people were left in the study, Boris immediately asked, "What are you talking about?" Alex took a sip of the coffee in front of him and replied, "We are negotiating, and it looks like it's almost done." Sure enough, it didn't take long before the Krupp couple returned to the study and agreed that Krupp would build a new weapons factory in a joint venture with the Romanian government. Among them, Krupp takes half of the shares with technology and equipment, while Romania takes up the other half with land and funds, and Romania has another 30 million lei in research and development funds. This weapons factory will reach an annual production capacity of 1,000 artillery pieces and their parts. It is considered to be the introduction of skilled workers, and the results of research and development will also be used free of charge in Germany and Romania. The new company was called Romania Krupp, or RK for short, abbreviation for Romanian and Krupp. It's just that, when Alex showed Edel the details of the negotiation, he couldn't help but laugh. It's really a talent. If you change to a superior, you'll be pissed off. But for the sake of his credit, let's let it go this time. Looks like Alex got it right. Dear, click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. Chapter 491 Washington Conference. After the end of World War I, when the people of various countries thought that peace had come, the United States, which made a lot of money in the war, had nothing to gain from the post-war interests. It can't be said that nothing has been achieved. At least one of the 14 peace proposals put forward by President Wilson has been implemented. It was preserved for the establishment of the League of Nations to maintain world peace. But it was dominated by Britain and France. The most crucial of all, whether in wartime or in peacetime, absolute freedom of navigation on the high seas, or the removal of economic barriers between countries and the establishment of treaties on trade equality, were ruthlessly rejected. This greatly upset the fledgling US government. It is also a result that is completely unacceptable to the high-spirited US government. In the view of the United States, it has made great efforts in this war, and it should share the dominance of the world with Britain and France. It is a pity that Britain and France have completely used the United States and put it aside. And when President Wilson returned to Washington with nothing, he was strongly criticized by Congress. Therefore, the Treaty of Versailles was also rejected by the US Congress. An angry America felt wronged, so the US Navy planned to build 10 battleships from 1919 to 1921, including 4 Colorado-class battleships and 6 Lexington-class battlecruisers. Other responses. Among them, the Lexington-class battlecruiser was the first battlecruiser built by the United States. As the embodiment of the rich and powerful US Navy, this class of battlecruisers will also show it vividly. It was originally planned to have a standard displacement of 44,300 tons and a 356mm, 14 inches, gun with a speed of 35 knots. Horrible. However, the United States has since improved it. The new plan increased the tonnage to 53,200 tons and replaced it with a 406mm, 16-inch naval gun and increased armor protection. Although the tonnage has increased, the speed can still reach 35 knots due to the replacement of a new type of heavy oil boiler. Hood is the younger brother, if it is built, but there will be no Lexington-class aircraft carrier by then, and this kind of shipbuilding move by the United States undoubtedly made Britain and France very nervous. France is currently unable to follow up because of its huge losses in World War I, and the United Kingdom, which regards sea power as a lifeline, cannot accept it. So in the face of the United States' continued aggressive shipbuilding, the United Kingdom must respond. Its Prime Minister, Lloyd George, even stated publicly, Great Britain would rather spend the last penny to maintain the advantage of the Navy over the United States or any other country. However, if the tiger will not fall, the empire on which the sun never sets is also a world hegemon. Of course, it cannot lose its prestige in this new competition. The 3 Admiral-class battlecruisers, Hood-class, which were subsequently suspended, began to be built again. However, from the perspective of the small family who only built 3 ships in the British Empire, their family background is not much. Speaking of the new naval competition, a new player has to be mentioned here, and that is Japan. Also, as a country that benefited a lot from this war, Romania, you can't see me, Japan also has the ambition to dominate the Eastern Pacific. So the famous 88 Fleet came on the stage. This is the 88 Fleet in the 1920s. There was a post-Russian Japanese war version before, and then there was a version before the outbreak of World War II, and there was a version in the 1980s, which is now called the 4th and 4th Fleet, on the basis of 2 Nagato-class battleships, Takaga-class ships, and 4 battlecruisers Amagi-class. The plan will allocate funds to build 4 battleships and 4 battlecruisers. For this reason, Japan will not hesitate to launch national donations to build this one fleet. The bad guy Nagato cheats even the pocket money of elementary school students. Facing the increasingly fierce shipbuilding plans of Britain, the United States and Japan, France, and Italy were also forced to join the race. In the face of another naval competition, countries that have long been tired of the war are scrambling to call for the continued shipbuilding plan that costs people and money. And just at this time, a sudden economic crisis after the war made the naval competition of the great powers feel powerless. In fact, this economic crisis is foreseeable. After the war, a large number of factories that were busy because of the war were cancelled their orders, and the reduction in orders made it unnecessary for factories to hire so many workers, so a large number of workers were pushed back into the market. Meanwhile, retired soldiers and governments cut spending, preventing an immediate transition from wartime regulation to peacetime free competition. In addition, the governments of various countries did not have the experience of how to deal with this after the war, so the people lacked purchasing power, and the factory inventory could not be sold, and the economic crisis broke out suddenly. The outbreak of the economic crisis has made people in various countries increasingly call for disarmament. The naval arms race among nations is also in trouble. The United Kingdom can't afford it first. It has long been deprived of financial resources by the war, and now it is hard to join the arms race, which is really miserable. Japan is also unable to do what it can. In order to implement the 8th Fleet Plan, the Navy appropriation has accounted for 1/3 of the entire national budget. Although the United States has deep pockets, it is very difficult to truly overwhelm Britain and Japan. It was against this backdrop that US President Warren Harding initiated a conference on limiting naval armaments. In the face of the US proposal, the competing British and Japanese countries agreed immediately. Since the three countries of the United States, Britain and Japan have agreed, then of course, France and Italy, which were forced to join, also agreed. As a respect for the initiator of the first proposal, after the negotiation of the relevant countries, Washington, the United States will be used as the negotiation venue. In order to show the importance of this meeting and negotiation, all countries went to the highest standard, so not only the Prime Minister and the President, but also the monarchs of the countries participating in the Washington meeting. What can a monarch with insufficient intelligence do? Is it possible to wear glasses? For a time, Washington and the United States became the focus of various countries. This also made the American people feel for the first time that so many people were paying attention to the United States, which indirectly increased the pride of Americans. The purpose of the Washington Conference is to resolve the balance of naval power among the major powers that the Treaty of Versailles failed to resolve, and the conflicts of interest in the Far East and the Pacific region, especially in China, and to improve the post-World War I world peace system. The United States, Britain and Japan played a major role in the Washington Conference. Unlike the countries around the world, who are focusing their attention on Washington, the venue for the talks, Edel, an anomaly, did not pay much attention to this future negotiation. After all, this is mainly about the negotiation between the Navy and the Far East, and currently Romania cannot reach the Far East. Dear, click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. It is said that those who give full marks to the new ones have found a beautiful wife at the end. The mobile station is newly revised and upgraded. The address, data and bookmarks are synchronized with the computer station. No advertisements. Fresh reading. Chapter 492. Discovery. 1. Autumn is the harvest season, and hard-working farmers still harvest their own crops. Colt also thinks so. But he was not a farmer, but a spy. He is currently standing on the side of the road wearing a simple worker's clothes and hat, holding a newspaper, and reading it like a real worker. From time to time, he touched his messy hair with his hands, and people who had nothing to do with him asked for words he didn't know. And from the sharp eyes that he swept quickly from time to time, it was discovered that he actually had another purpose. This street is full of dilapidated buildings, with all kinds of information randomly posted on it. There are job seekers, recruiters, renters, and various small advertisements. This is a low-income settlement in Galati, where dirty is the norm, and even the shops here sell all kinds of cheap goods in the evening. All kinds of pubs selling inferior wine show a different kind of deformity and prosperity under the illumination of neon lights. There will also be people of various colors on the street looking for their own excitement, and within a short distance, you can also see drunken sleepers lying on the side of the road. On the side of the street, women wearing revealing clothes and smearing low-quality perfumes are soliciting their own business. It's a joyous haven for Galati's lowest echelons. But of course that's not why Colt is here. In front of him, in a place similar to other buildings, hangs a sign for a training class for workers. This is the target of his attention. In fact, in Galati or in other parts of Romania, there are many such training courses for workers, both private and government funded. Their main purpose is to train more workers for the government, to meet the needs of Romania's industrialization. This training class is a little different. According to their own reports, they also teach some other things as a spy. It is not uncommon for several informants to provide information for oneself. Colt had an informant who reported to him that, after drinking with a co-worker, he heard the drunk co-worker say that in the future Romania will be governed by the working class, and he will also become an official. The informant felt unusual when he heard the news, and immediately informed Colt of the news. As a spy, Colt knew immediately the seriousness of the matter isn't the idea of the Red Soviet Russia in the East, that the working class is in power. Someone dares to promote this idea in Romania, and we must not let it go. However, Colt knew that it was best to find out and report this kind of thing, so after his investigation of the worker, he pointed the finger at the worker training class. After a further secret adjustment, Lupa, who opened the training class, was the one who secretly promoted communist ideology. It was someone else who had already reported to his superiors at this time, but Colt had his own ambitions. This kind of major situation will also mean huge credit, and it is best for you to investigate and report it clearly before you can reveal your ability. Knowing that Rappel was the propagandist of communist ideology, Colt decided to put a long line to catch the big fish, and he would report it later when he got to the bottom of it. He doesn't believe that this is completely the behavior of one person. He must have superiors and relevant contacts. So Colt himself came here to squat, waiting for his contact with his superiors. But more than 10 days have passed, and the name is Lupa still has not contacted other people. But Colt has enough patience. The prey will always report to his superiors. While he was waiting quietly, a young man with a dark top hat and a simple suit walked out of the training class. Colt immediately lowered his head and read the newspaper he had already read many times. That's right, this person is Lupa, and he has already kept the other person's appearance firmly in his mind. After Lupa looked left and right, head down and walk out of the street. Colt didn't follow. He waited until he couldn't see the target, and then walked unhurriedly to the side alley, where a bicycle was locked. After entering the alley, Colt immediately took off his jacket and draped it over his body. At the same time, he got on the bicycle and rode slowly in the direction Lupa left. Because he has long known that Lupa doesn't have a car, he usually travels by bus, and there is a ride spot on the street next to it, so it's just better than the walking Lupa. As for the possibility of losing it, it was a joke to a spy. He was already familiar with the surroundings when he came to follow him. Halfway through the ride, I saw Lupa who was in a hurry. Something wrong. Still, Colt casually overtook him and rode near the ride point where he needed to change transportation. By the time the target was waiting for the shuttle bus, Colt was already waiting for him in the Model T not far away. Colt drove far away from the shuttle that Lupa had boarded, feeling that his hard work had not been in vain. Judging from the time Lupa took, it was very likely that he was going to see his superiors this time. Because, based on the scope of his activities, Lupa seldom strayed too far from his training class. Colt, who followed Rappel all the way, came to the wealthier West City only to find that he got out of the car. Colt felt that the goal this time was very likely to connect with his superiors, so he deliberately parked the car hundreds of meters in front of the target, and even had time to change his clothes and makeup. By the time Colt reappeared, he was a successful man with a big beard, single-rimmed glasses, well-fitting clothes and shiny leather shoes. Following all the way, the target stopped when he reached an alley and began to look around. And Colt, who followed him, did not look sideways and walked forward with a relaxed expression. Don't think that as ordinary people think. The target must avoid its sight when it stops. This is a wrong move, because it is very likely that there is a responder following the target. At this time, you should move forward casually. Even if the other party makes a strange behavior, you need to look at him like an ordinary person. So Colt walked in front of the target like a normal person, and instead of looking back, he continued to move forward. He stopped when he came to a shop and took out a small mirror to look back. Colt breathed a sigh of relief when he realized that the target was indeed walking down the alley, because when he passed the entrance of the alley, he took a peek and found that there were only a few families in this dead-end alley. The main goal is to enter here, and it is easy to handle. After taking the opportunity to buy a few things at random in this store, he learned from the small talk with the owner of the store that some of these families' preliminary situation. Colt then returned to his car and parked it in the alley. I went to the coffee shop next to me and chose a seat that could see the alley and waited. After nearly 2 hours, his target looper finally came out of one of them, and Colt took the opportunity to observe the person who sent him out. This is a middle-aged man in his 30s, and he is well dressed to see that he is very cultivated. Now that a new target appeared, Colt decided to investigate it. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 493, Discovery, Part 2. After Colt's investigation, the middle-aged man who sent Looper out was named Marius, who ran a grocery store nearby, and had no reason to have any intersection with Looper in the slum. Moreover, the grocery store it operates is also 3 days of fishing and 2 days of drying nets, which does not look like a qualified operator at all. So when Colt finished investigating Marius' information, he intuitively thought that this Marius should be Looper's superior. At this time, Colt felt the need to focus on Marius. However, it is not enough to rely on his own strength, and he needs to send additional personnel, so asking for support has become his only choice. When was this situation discovered? In the Galati branch of the Security Bureau, the branch chief Gloria looked at the report in front of him and asked Colt, as well as his direct superior Valer, I got a secret report half a month ago that someone was promoting radism. At that time, in order to confirm whether the information was accurate, I conducted a preliminary secret investigation. I found that someone was promoting radism, and I also investigated another clue, that is, Looper, who promotes radism, has connections with other people, and I suspect this is a secret underground organization, maybe a Moscow conspiracy. Facing Director Gloria, Colt felt a little pressure. Originally, he only planned to ask his superiors for some help, and he only reported that someone was promoting radism. Who knew that, after listening to his findings, Valer felt that things were unusual, and immediately brought him to report to the director. Director Gloria is famous in Galatasaray, from the top officials and nobles to the local gangsters, and he has all experienced his power. So in the face of the director's inquiry, Colt was like pouring beans into a bamboo tube, and said everything he knew. When he told the whole thing, the Captain Valer beside him flashed a strange light. It seems that, if he doesn't get promoted this time, he will have a hard time in the future. Someone dares to preach dangerous ideas on my turf. Valerie, do you think I'm too kind? Director Gloria picked up a pencil and played with it casually and asked Captain Valer. When the director was questioning, Colt clearly felt that the captain beside him was tense. It seemed that the director gave him a lot of pressure, and any question could make the captain feel the pressure. In the face of Director Gloria's question, Captain Valer immediately replied with a serious expression, the director is these people who don't know whether to live or die. As long as you give your order, I will immediately arrest them and torture them. Get it back now. It's not okay. Director Gloria clearly disagreed with Captain Valer's words. He shook his head and said, since these people are promoting dangerous ideas in Galati, there must be others who are promoting them elsewhere. I'm going to kill them all. You understand? Is it understood, Director? I will arrange personnel to continue to investigate these people secretly, and I will not let any of them go. Captain Valer's words made Director Gloria very satisfied. Then go for it. If there are not enough people, you can apply for support. After Captain Valerie left, Director Gloria said to Colt, you are very good. You have given me a new joy in my boring work. After working with your boss to do this well, I will apply for a vice captain position. It seems that Captain Valer's actions have not concealed the director's eyes. The vice captain's promise made Colt overjoyed. You must know that it is too difficult to get promoted in the Security Bureau. Being able to become a deputy captain will at least save Colt from struggling for 7 or 8 years. Many people are approaching retirement and can't get the vice captain position. It seems that this risky move is totally worth it. After sending off the thankful cult, Gloria immediately picked up a black phone. Please take me over to the general administration. I have something to report to Director Milik. So with the assistance of the general administration, with the Galati branch as a core, the investigation operation of the joint cooperation of several branches began. According to the investigation, the occurrence of Galati is not an isolated case. In Iasi, Constanta, Edessa and many other regions, there are people who secretly promote red ideas under various covers. These propagandists of red ideology ranged from a month or two to nearly a year. They were all organized by a secret political party called the Romanian Communist Party. They carry out propaganda in the name of being the masters of the working class. Forget it, don't dare to write. When these situations were summarized, with the order of the security chief Milik, multiple local sub-bureaus carried out a unified arrest operation. In Iasi, a middle-aged man was giving a speech to some young people in an abandoned house when a man in a security bureau uniform suddenly broke into the door with a weapon. All of them put their heads in their hands and squatted on the ground. With a loud roar, the scene was chaotic, and the middle-aged man who was giving a speech immediately ran all the way back. But he may not know, since he was found by the security bureau. Where can he run away? After a while, the middle-aged man was brought back in despair. Such scenes were staged simultaneously in Constanta, Cluj and other regions, the most intense of which was in Edessa. As an important port city on the Black Sea, many of the members of the new Red Party in Edessa are Russians. These rebellious hares resisted fiercely in the face of the arrest of the Security Bureau. But since they are ready to arrest, how can the Security Bureau not consider this situation? So after a shootout, the sub-bureau chief who was in command of the operation heard a report from the subordinate who led the team. Report to the chief: all targets have been subdued by us. 9 of them were killed with guns resisting, and the remaining 3 were injured by stray bullets, one of whom was seriously injured. Send the injured to the hospital, arrange enough people to take care of them, and escort the rest back. As ordered, Chief. As for Galati, under the leadership of Director Gloria, they captured all the people who had been found. As for Colt, he was given preferential treatment and personally directed a team to capture that Marius back. In the end, according to the confession, he was the person in charge in Galati. For this reason, he was successfully promoted to the post of vice captain by virtue of his credit. When everything was over, Milik reported the results to Edel. Your Majesty, we have uprooted this secret political party funded by the Soviet Union in many places. A total of 157 people have been arrested, of which 27 are the backbone. They are all the heads who have joined this political party for 2 to 3 years. In fact, they have not investigated whether it was funded by the Soviet Union. However, since the Security Bureau said that you have it, then you must have it. It is said that a letter written by Lenin to his head Karol Morley has been successfully produced in the General Bureau, which is the evidence. Edel, who was listening to Milik's report, had a strange expression. There is no way, as someone who has accepted red ideas for many years, in turn catches the people who spread this idea. It's only weird if you don't think it's weird. But sometimes but decides the head, and since sitting in this position, all behaviors that are harmful to it will face a severe crackdown. Your Majesty, do we deal with these people in secret or open trial? It wasn't until Milik asked about the result that Edel's face returned to normal. Both options have legacy hazards. Secrecy will make it more difficult for the Red Party to dig, and after this lesson, its behavior will be more radical, which will endanger the security situation in Romania. As for public trials, it will also expand the party's influence, and will inevitably bring more ambitious and extreme people into the mix. Edel never saw Romania as a haven of carefree life, where radical industrialization has made many people rich, and made some homeless. Even the great eastern country, that has been baptized by 2 ideologies, and known as the last bastion of the bourgeoisie, cannot make everyone rich, so how can Romania achieve everyone's satisfaction? Therefore, there are not a few poor people in Romania, and it is needless to say that this kind of thinking is attractive to the poor. Let's do a public trial. Remember that evidence is very important. After thinking about it for a while, Edel decided to deal with it publicly. However, it must be labeled as a subversive organization of Soviet Russia against Romania, and every patriotic public must scold it. Please rest assured, Your Majesty, I will definitely make the trial evidence conclusive. Obviously, Milak understood Edel's words, and he believes that a new batch of evidence will be intercepted by the Security Bureau. I believe this will make the patriotic people even more disgusted with him. Chapter 494 Preparations for the Navy. In the trial of the Red Party, there was a lot of noise in Romania, but it was all infamy. As for the Red Party, that dared to collude with the Soviet Russian political party, it reached an agreement to pay Western Ukraine and Eastern Moldavia, and invited it to help itself become the ruler of Romania. Every Romanian with a conscience gritted his teeth. This is the inherent territory of Romania, where the Romanian people have lived since ancient times. These darn traitors dare to do this, and they should all be hanged. For this reason, many members of the party who were deceived left tears of repentance in the courtroom, and they eloquently recounted their experiences of being deceived by the organization. So the court gave them a lenient sentence with a punitive attitude. These lost people will be in 5 to 15 years of reform through labor, and during this period, will learn about patriotism every day. And for those who do not repent, the court also severely punishes them. They will be sentenced to death for treason, and deprived of political rights for life. For the party leader Carol Morley and others who have not been arrested and brought to justice, the court also sentenced them to capital punishment in absentia. The trial of the court also allowed the Red Party to appear in front of everyone, and at the same time, deterred many people with ulterior motives. According to post-mortem investigations, many Hungarians in the new territories left in a hurry with their families when there was a lot of uproar in Romania. Because of this incident, the negotiations on the navies of various countries in Washington were also coming to an end. The United States, Britain, France, Italy, and Japan, the 5 naval powers, signed the treaty after a lot of scrambled negotiations. The treaty mainly stipulates that the total tonnage of the capital ships of each country is: the United States, 400 metric tons, the British Empire, 400 metric tons, France, 800 metric tons, Italy, 800 metric tons, Japan, 040 metric tons, and each country's single ship must not exceed 0 metric tons, and the main gun caliber of each country's warships must not exceed 16 inches. 406 millimeters, and more than 10,000 tons are the main battleships, which will also open the era of heavy cruisers. In addition, for the newly emerged aircraft carriers, countries have also made regulations, and a single ship shall not exceed 432 metric tons. At the same time, the gross tonnage of aircraft carriers in various countries has also been stipulated. The United States, 160 metric tons, the United Kingdom, 160 metric tons, France, 960 metric tons, Italy, 960 metric tons, Japan, 296 metric tons, among them for the warships that have already been built beyond the standard. Countries have also engaged in fierce quarrels in the negotiation. Among them, the United Kingdom and the United States demanded to be dismantled, while the Japanese side asked to keep it on the grounds that the Nagato class was donated by elementary school students, and they could not dismantle it. This class of warships, in the face of Japan's stubborn attitude, the final negotiation result was reservation. However, Japan can only retain 2 Nagato class, Nagato, Mutsu, and in response, the United States will also retain 3 Colorado class, Colorado, West Virginia, Maryland, while the United Kingdom can build 2 Nelson class ships, Nelson, Rodney. These 7 most powerful warships are also called Big 7 by naval personnel. In addition to reaching an agreement on the Navy, the countries also reached an opinion on the division of the Far East forces. The island fortresses occupied by all countries in the Pacific region shall maintain the status quo, and new naval bases and fortresses shall not be established, except for the Hawaiian Islands, Australia, and New Zealand. In addition, the issue of China has also become the core of negotiations among various countries. For Shandong, which was forcibly occupied by Japan, all countries have expressed their request to withdraw from it. And the 21 articles signed with the Republic of China must also abolish some clauses In the face of pressure from various countries, Japan's representative Kihiro issued a statement, abolishing the terms of dispatching consultants to China, the joint police and arsenal between China and Japan, and the right to build railways at the same time. Countries also signed the Nine Power Pact. The main contents of the treaty are as follows. The contracting countries respect China's sovereignty and independence, as well as the territorial and administrative integrity, maintain the principle of equal industrial and commercial opportunities for all countries in China. The rights of the people of friendly countries shall not encourage actions that are harmful to the security of friendly countries, except for China. No country shall seek, or sponsor its own people, to seek patents or privileges in any designated area of China. This treaty affirms the principle of open door and equal opportunity implemented by all countries in China. It ends the dominant position Japan occupied in China after the outbreak of the First World War, and makes China once again the object of profit-making by the great powers. Countries are basically satisfied with this treaty. Britain has once again established itself as the world's first navy, albeit shared. Japan, on the other hand, established its position in the Western Pacific by virtue of this treaty, ensuring its superiority in the Far East. The United States needs to take care of the two oceans, and the United States is also very satisfied with this, which also makes it the #1 existence in the naval world, even if it is tied for the first place. In addition, he also dismantled the Anglo-Japanese alliance, which is a good decision for the United States. The Anglo-Japanese alliance stipulates that military assistance should be provided in the event of an attack by any third country. The two limited alliances that compete with their own interests are also very dazzling in the eyes of the United States. When this clause, which later generations called a naval holiday, was presented to Edel, looking at these clauses that were almost the same as in the previous life, he felt that it was time for Romania to catch up. However, the ink of the Washington Treaty has not yet dried, and the Romanian shipbuilding plan still needs to be carried out slowly, but the relevant preparations need to be accelerated. So Edel immediately called Admiral Lumberton, Minister of the Navy, and Admiral Nestacu, Commander of the Fleet. About the Washington Treaty, have you read it? I've seen it. Of course, the two Romanian Navy executives have seen the most influential thing in the world at present. They have not only read it, but also analyzed it, and believe that in the future heavy cruisers under 10,000 tons will become the focus of attention of various countries in the next 10 years. Since countries have stopped building capital ships, you need to pay attention, and introduce many talents, equipment, and technologies. Neither of them are idiots, and the meaning of Edel's words has been revealed very clearly. Please rest assured, Your Majesty, the Navy will definitely live up to its expectations. However, the current Navy's funds are limited, and I don't know if there are other ways to think of additional expenditures. Facing Lieutenant General Lumberton's complaints, Edel thought about it and said, I will ask the government to provide an unplanned funding, but this is the last funding for the Navy this year. You need to make good use of this funding money to bring in enough talent, equipment and technology for the Navy. In the face of Edel's admonition, the two immediately assured, please rest assured, Your Majesty, that the Navy will live up to expectations, and will fight for Romania's interests. Listening to the assurances of the two, Edel waved his hand and said, if you have nothing to do, just go down. Sending off the two cheerful Navy executives, Edel looked at the map in front of him and pondered. There were few threats to Romania in the Black Sea. Both Turkey and Russia only had one or two early dreadnoughts. However, Romania should not be locked in the Black Sea in the future, and Romania must also be present in the Mediterranean Sea and even in the adjacent Atlantic and Indian Oceans. But these are things in the future, and it is still necessary to lay the foundation first. The arrival of the naval holiday not only brought peace to the world, but also gave Romania a chance to catch up, all within this decade. Chapter 495 Changes in the situation. After the Washington Treaty was signed, Romania was quietly fighting for its naval dream. In Asia Minor, there is also a group of people who are fighting for their homeland, that is, the Turks. As punishment for the defeat of the Ottoman Empire, Britain, France and other countries confirmed it in the Treaty of Sevres. The content is as follows. The west of the Catalga line was ceded to Greece, and the sovereignty from Suc to the west of Buhania was temporarily returned to Turkey. 5 years later, 1925, a referendum was used to decide whether to join Greece. Euxine, west of Mushy, Bitlis, and south of Lake Van belonged to the newly established Armenia. The area of the strait connecting the Black Sea and the Mediterranean would become a demilitarized zone, but the Allied powers would have military action over the area. The United States, Britain, France, Italy, Japan, and Romania have formed the Strait Management Committee, which is responsible for shipping, lighthouse management and navigation in the region. The territories of the Arab and Iraqi territories that originally belonged to the Ottomans were ceded to Britain and France, and new protected areas were established. Among them, the south of Karatash and Mardin belonged to Syria, and the south of Mosul belonged to Iraq. The Ottomans must abolish the conscription system. The national army must not exceed 45,000 people, and there must be no heavy weapons, air force, navy, or large merchant ships. Taxes earned by the Ottoman Empire were given priority to pay war reparations and the costs of the Allied occupation. Troops' restoration of extraterritorial jurisdiction. Extraterritoriality still applies, even if any future regime succeeds the Ottoman Empire. After the Turkish people become naturalized in any of the Allied countries, they are protected by extraterritorial rights, and no longer need to pay taxes to the Ottoman government. If the terms were not implemented according to the wishes of the Allies, Istanbul would be occupied. This clause can be said to limit the Ottoman territory to the peninsula of Asia Minor, and it no longer has the right to manage the Black Sea Strait. The coast of the Love Sea has also been assigned to Greece, and a new country will be born in its eastern part. The newly established Armenia includes Rize, Erzurum, Mush, War and many other provinces in modern Turkey, and the territory is in 11 million square kilometers. Its territory has also been directly reduced to 540,000 square kilometers. You must know that the territory of the Ottoman Empire before the First World War was about 2.1 million square kilometers, which was divided alive. However, in the face of pressure from the Allied powers, Sultan Muhammad VI immediately held a cabinet meeting, and the agreement was passed. Faced with such harsh terms, it has aroused strong opposition from nationalists and the bourgeoisie. They formed the Turkish Grand National Assembly in Ankara, with Kemal as its leader. In the face of the violent resistance that broke out in Turkey, Britain, France and other countries instigated Greece to launch a war against it. As its king, Constantine was originally exiled because he opposed Greece's accession to the Allied powers, but he regained the throne after his son Alexander I passed away. He died 3 days after being bitten by a monkey and caused an infection, and he was mobilized immediately after receiving support from Britain and France. The army launched an offensive towards Ankara. The Greek army once pushed the front to the line of the Sakarya River, less than 30 kilometers from Ankara. However, as its leader, Kemal personally went to the front to command at a critical moment. King Constantine of Greece also went to the front as the commander-in-chief. In the counterattack of the Turkish army, the Greek army was defeated. 250,000 people suffered casualties in this war, which was an unforgettable fiasco for Greece. At the same time, the defeat also cost Constantine the throne, and 6 people including former Prime Minister Gunaris were sentenced to death. After the defeat of Greece, Britain, France and other countries saw that they could not force the Turks to accept the Treaty of Sevres, and could only renegotiate. In Lausanne, Switzerland, the two sides renegotiated. After some bargaining negotiations, the outcome of the negotiations was finally recognized by all countries, mainly Turkey. The treaty has a total of 143 articles, the main contents of which are announcing the official restoration of peace between the Allies and Turkey from the date of entry into force of the treaty. The Allies recognized Turkey's independence and territorial integrity within the mainland of Asia Minor, and confirmed Turkey's borders from the Black Sea to the Aegean Sea, the Mediterranean Sea to Persia, now Iran. The East Thrace and Izmir areas were returned to Turkey. Armenia and some ethnic minority areas such as Kurdistan are still owned by Turkey. The issue of the ownership of Mosul, the oil-producing area, is left to be resolved later. The Anglo-Turkish Agreement of 1926 assigned Mosul to Iraq, which is under British escrow. Turkey gave up its territorial claims to Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Libya and other places that were previously part of the Ottoman Empire that were divided up by Britain, France, Italy and other countries, and recognized Britain's claims to Cyprus and Italy's Oskanossus, now Yugospora, the annexation of the D's islands. For the losses caused by the First World War and the Allied armed intervention in Turkey, the two sides waived their claims for compensation. Turkey repaid part of the foreign debts of the former Ottoman Empire. The contracting parties announced the cancellation of all extraterritorial rights and financial and customs supervision rights in Turkey. Implement customs autonomy. The Strait area shall be demilitarized, and the contracting countries shall declare their agreement to the principle of freedom of passage by sea and air and freedom of navigation in the Strait area. The Strait area shall not be fortified or stationed with armed forces, and shall be supervised by the International Committee, also known as the Straits Committee. The newly signed Treaty of Lausanne made Turkey the only defeated country that dared to resist. While Edel looked at the signed treaty, another thing came to mind. That was when the British and French ambassadors visited him after the defeat of Greece, deliberately testing whether Romania was willing to send troops to Turkey. Facing the temptation of Britain and France, Edel asked about the price of sending troops. When he heard that Britain and France were unwilling to assign the Straits area to any country, Edel lost interest in continuing to talk about it. Yes, Edel had secretly traded arms to Turkey before, but this was based on ambitions for the Strait region. Since Romania can't get the Strait area, what reason does it have to join in? If you really treat Romania as a thug, you have to give a price that you want. The current Romania is not before the First World War, and will end up helping out for a little profit. In fact, he is more concerned about the April agreement between Germany and Russia. Because it was signed in Rapallo, Italy, it is also known as the Treaty of Rapallo. The most important thing in the treaty is that Germany recognized the Soviet government and was the first country to recognize the Soviet Union. In addition to this, both countries agreed to cancel all pre-war debts and forego wartime demands. In return for German recognition, Soviet Russia and Germany also signed very favorable trade concessions. This made the representatives of various countries who were preparing to negotiate with the Soviet Union in Genoa felt a little overwhelmed. Because the content of Genoa's negotiation is that Soviet Russia recognizes and repays its foreign debts borrowed by the Tsarist government before and during the war. In return, the countries will recognize the Soviet government. And now Germany is the first to recognize Soviet Russia, so that the countries cannot form unity. But for the current German actions, the countries do not know what to do. On the contrary, France has severely criticized Germany's private agreement. Its behavior is offensive to all countries, and it believes that it should be severely punished. The United Kingdom does not agree with this, and who can not know that France is so careful? As long as Germany is involved, it must be severely punished. The disagreement between Britain and France brought this discussion about Germany's private actions to a screeching halt. In the end, the Genoa meeting failed to reach any results, and the talks between the countries and the Soviet Union broke up unhappily. Chapter 496, Marching into Rome. After various countries broke up with the Soviet Union and Russia at the Genoa conference, because of the foreign debt problem, Edel's eyes are still focused here. Because the current situation in Italy is unusually chaotic, all this is caused by the war before the First World War. Italy's economy was good, and its fiscal revenue and national income were higher than Austria-Hungary. A lot of information was found. However, in terms of coal, iron and grain, which show the strength of the country, Italy has shown its original shape. Its steel production is 1.42 million tons, and Austria-Hungary, which is one place higher than him, has 5 million tons. Not to mention coal, the output of 700,000 tons is a big joke. Japan, which is short of coal in its own country, has 14 million tons, not to mention other countries with tens of millions or hundreds of millions of tons of output. As for grain, Italy remains at the bottom with 8.1 million tons. More importantly, Italy's performance in the war was too bad. The Battle of backstabbing Austria-Hungary left Italy with a bump in the mountains in the north, and even needed rescue from Britain and France. The navy performed slightly better, but only limited to the blockade of the Austro-Hungarian fleet. The poor performance on the battlefield is ultimately reflected in the post-war results. The original condition for Britain and France to give Italy was to give Tyrol, Trieste, Istria, part of the Dalmatian coast and the Dodecanese Islands, where the Greeks were inhabited. Italy was also allowed to expand its African colonies and participate in the partition of the Ottoman Empire. But the end result was only given to Trieste and South Tyrol, and nothing else. In particular, the most coveted Istrian Peninsula and Dalmatian coast in Italy have not been obtained. If you get two places, Italy will basically monopolize the Adriatic Sea. However, these two places have been assigned to Serbia. This is one of the reasons why Italy and Yugoslavia were tense before World War II. The Italian nationals, who failed to gain enough, and who themselves suffered heavy losses from the war, quit and ousted the negotiating Prime Minister Orlando. So from 1919 until Mussolini came to power, Italy changed 5 prime ministers in just 3 years, which is a manifestation of the violent turmoil in Italian politics. Of course, the chaos in the political arena also affects other aspects. The most important thing to the public is the economy and public security. After the war, the Italian economy never recovered to its pre-war level. In terms of public security, the world-famous mafia is also in chaos all over Italy. Their kidnapping, extortion, vendetta and other acts have made the people miserable. And the chaos in the political arena has made these mafia arrogants increasingly arrogant. And at this time a war correspondent broke into the political arena. Benito Mussolini was born in a small town called Prodapio in the province of Ferrara, Italy. The young Mussolini spent 3 years in the local primary school, and then he was sent to start a Salesian. After studying in a boarding school, he was expelled from the school for fighting with his classmates. Mussolini continued his studies at the Carducci Pedagogical School in Flimpopoli, where he obtained his diploma with honors in 1901. In 1902, he began to live in exile all over the world. He worked as a substitute teacher, worked part-time jobs, lived in no fixed place, and could not eat enough. In 1905, Mussolini joined the Socialist Party. In 1912, he served as editor-in-chief of the Socialist Party's organ, Vanderbilt. In 1914 he left the Socialist Party and founded the Italian People's Daily. Was drafted into the army. In June 1917, Mussolini was discharged from the army due to injury, and once again served as editor-in-chief of Italian People. During this period, Mussolini was deeply influenced by Nietzsche's voluntarism. He praised the subjective fighting spirit, emphasized that the purpose of life is to exert power, and believed that Superman is the creator of history. Mussolini also studied Pirito's writings, and was therefore opposed to popular politics. Equality and the rule of the people are human misconceptions, he said. In practice, the development of personality will be limited. He also studied the philosophy of Nietzsche and Sorel, which greatly influenced his later thinking. The political chaos gave Mussolini considerable help, and he used his newspaper to vigorously promote his theory of ****. It is believed that a great country must centralize power in order to ensure development and allow people to live and work in peace and contentment. For this reason, he also gave a lot of examples, from Caesar in ancient times to Napoleon in modern times, and even Edel in Romania was mentioned by him a little. Flattered with excellent eloquence and publicity, Mussolini established the National Party in 1922. A large number of people who were disappointed with the government joined it, and he was also called leader by the party members. A major opportunity soon ushered in by Mussolini, who formed the National Party. In 1922, a large-scale strike broke out in Italy because of the rising cost of living and the growing dissatisfaction of workers with their meager wages. And Mussolini actually had no prejudice against the striking workers, but as a political figure, he knew his opportunity was coming. The reason is very simple. Only the government has the ability to stop the strike. However, the current chaos in Italian politics has made the government's blocking behavior empty talk. At this time, as long as the Communist Party can quell the strike, it will greatly increase the prestige of its party and myself. This is a very tempting move for the Communist Party. What's more insidious is that, as long as he can solve the problem of the strike, he can make the rich factory owners donate generously. To put it bluntly, politics is a money-burning game, and the Communist Party sees this very clearly. So he directed his own party members to sabotage the strike action. And the result is also to his satisfaction. The upsurge of strikes in various places was quelled by the Communist Party. At this time, public opinion praised the behavior of the Communist Party, and at the same time, called Mussolini the savior of Italy, and he also had greater ambitions in the reputation. Since he is known as the savior of Italy, why can't he solve the current chaos in Italian politics? With this idea in mind, Mussolini immediately set out to realize his ambitions. Years of chaos in the political arena made him feel that there were too many uncertainties in the election. So he thought of taking power by force. If you want to seize power, you must ensure that the army does not object. So he showed goodwill to the army. He publicly declared in the newspapers that he had a special respect for the army of Victoriavinus and took the opportunity to win over the high-ranking army. At the same time, he also organized the Communist Party into a more militarized black shirt army. It was also made up of the young, strongest and most fanatical members of the party, who only needed an order from the leader to drive into Rome and shred the rowdy MPs. When he felt that he was almost ready, Mussolini ordered the national mobilization of the Communist Party at the headquarters of the Communist Party and formed the Supreme Command. Subsequently, the Supreme Command issued a letter to the people of the country announcing the march to Rome. At the same time, he advised the military and police not to fight against them, saying that their goal was only to overthrow the decadent ruling class, to persuade the propertied classes not to be afraid, and to declare that they would protect the legitimate rights of workers and peasants. He also threatened that the Communist Party would be loyal to the royal family, intending to win over the royalists in Italy, and trying to reduce the resistance to seizing power. After everything was ready, Mussolini issued the Revolutionary Manifesto, and then the Black Army of 100,000 set off for Rome. When the **** marched to Rome, most of the government troops and police along the way strictly maintained neutrality. Only a few people led by the Communist Party blocked and opposed this, but due to the disparity in power, they were suppressed by the Communist Party. After the CCP issued a declaration of battle, almost all political parties were terrified. Some surrendered obediently, while others were wagging their tails and begging for mercy. Some are like mice, hiding secretly. Even a group of congressmen came to the Milanese newspaper to ask Mussolini, who wanted to trade the central government for an armistice or a truce. Facing the demands of this group of cowardly politicians, Mussolini certainly would not agree. He is still waiting for a message, that is the king's approval. And he didn't let him wait long. One day later, the king's adjutant, General Cittadini, asked Mussolini to come to Rome quickly, and the king wanted to put the heavy responsibility of forming a cabinet on him. Mussolini's gamble won, and at the same time, the Communist Party became the ruling party of the country from a newly formed party in just over a year. And his way of seizing power has also attracted the attention and learning of many people. Chapter 497 Economy and Nation. Falling in love with Yao Canshu. When Mussolini ascended the throne of Italian Prime Minister, the news was sent to Romania. Edel looked at this familiar name and could basically guess what happened next. In fact, Italy itself has many problems, but the biggest problem is the lack of national strength. The most prominent performance is the lack of its own coal and iron production areas, which makes Italy's heavy industry underdeveloped, and the second is the lack of the people's lack of martial spirit. The former cannot be changed. The closest coal and iron producing area to Italy is the Ruhr, followed by Bohemia as the Czech Republic, while the latter can still be changed. First, it is necessary to train a capable army, even if it does less work. Prussia, Japan. Secondly, we must choose a powerful country to fight a war at a favorable time. It is best to win, such as Prussia and Japan. Even if we cannot win, we must be undefeated to resist US aggression and aid Korea, and the counterexample is India. With such achievements, the self-confidence of the Chinese people is stimulated. Only with self-confidence can we continue to transform society. This period takes 10 to 20 years, and it may be longer, but it depends on the national characteristics, and Italy obviously didn't do this. So it's okay to play a small country, such as Ethiopia, but it hangs when it encounters a stronger country, such as Greece, and it stops when it encounters a real strong country, the United Kingdom. Of course, it is not denied that the Italian army is too involved, but this is not the reason why Mussolini did not rectify the army. And his future head of state will be much better than him. At least know that the army needs to be cleaned up. Judging from the Polish campaign and the French campaign, The heads of state are clearly clearing up faster than each other. Point of course, Edel can only pay attention to the situation of European countries at present, who makes Romania need to digest the fruits of victory. Romania has taken too many new territories in this war, and currently Romania is not qualified to have an opinion on European affairs. At most, keep an eye on the surrounding neighbors so that they don't threaten Romania. This is not to fear these countries, but will affect the speed of Romania's digestion and the process of strengthening its industry. After all, it's still very uncomfortable to be a disgusting person. However, there does not appear to be such a possible threat at present. Hungary and Bulgaria are both defeated countries. It has only been a few years since the end of the war, and they are still busy dealing with the chaotic situation in the country. They dare not have any careful thoughts. And Serbia is also busy dealing with new territories, and has a good relationship with Romania. He is crazy to cause trouble. As for the biggest threat to the Soviet Union, Russia is currently busy building the Soviet Union, and the domestic economy needs to be repaired by them, and they have no time to pay attention to Romania. Therefore, Romania is currently in the era of the most relaxed external environment. Since it is the most relaxed environment, Edel's focus must be on the domestic economy, of which the heavy industry in Eastern Galicia is the most concerned. Government investment in Eastern Galicia reached a record high of 460 million lei this year, while private investment in Eastern Galicia also reached 280 million lei in addition to government investment. It can be said that the Galicia region is currently the hottest investment hotspot in Romania. A lot of money poured into Galicia. The proportion of the region in the national economy is also increasing. The establishment of a large number of chemical, manufacturing, smelting, energy and other factories not only drives the economy of the region, but also transforms the ethnicity and culture of the region. When Romania seized the area, its main inhabitants were mainly Polish and Ukrainian people, and local communication basically used Polish and Ukrainian languages. Other ethnic groups such as Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, and Jews could only be classified come together, but this year, the region's ethnic groups have undergone tremendous changes, with Romanian the largest increase. They are all people who come to work and do business from all parts of Romania, because of the large number of factories opened. Since it is impossible to come without family members, the family members of more than 100,000 workers will inevitably affect all aspects of the region. Among them, eating habits and cultural language are also the most direct manifestations, because these people are basically business and workers, and their income must be middle and high level in the region. And if you want to make their money, if you can't even communicate, how can you make money? So the region is faced with the influx of these Romanian ethnic groups, and other ethnic groups in the region have more or less learned to use Romanian. Therefore, if you want to change other ethnic groups, the best way is to start with the economy and let them voluntarily integrate into Romanian society. At present, the proportion of Romanian people in the region has reached 22.4%. It is believed that, if this development trend continues, the Romanian people in this region will not be far away. Since some ethnic groups have increased their ratios, then some ethnic groups have decreased their ratios, and the Polish ethnic group is also the most conspicuous among the declining ratios. To know that in the beginning of Eastern Galicia, the Polish ethnic group accounted for half of the region's population. However, after the founding of Poland, the Polish ethnic group in the region continued to decline. After the Soviet-Polish War, after Poland and Romania reached an ethnic exchange agreement, mainly for the Polish ethnic group in the region, the population of ethnic Poles in the region declined very rapidly. At the call of the motherland, a large number of Poles sold their properties in the region and moved their families to Poland. At present, only 28.7% of Poles are in Eastern Galicia, and it is almost impossible to keep the status of the second largest ethnic group. However, I believe that the migration of Poles will not stop, and more Poles will leave Romania in the future. Interestingly, the industries that migrated Poles were basically bought by new Romanians, and the local Ukrainians are basically not buying, even if some industries seem very tempting. All this was caused by the actions of the high-level officials of the former Ukrainian Republic. On the one hand, they were to show their favor to the Romanian government, and on the other hand, news came from the Soviet Union The lives of the Ukrainian people currently under the jurisdiction of the Soviet Union are very miserable, and a large number of materials have been confiscated by Moscow. These news also frighten them. For the sake of their own peace in Romania, they are also showing affection in disguise. East Garcia is the region with the best ethnic integration in Romania, which is brought about by the influx of money. Of course, other regions do not have this condition, but in general it is still good. At least Romanian rule is much better than before. Because the Romanian government has also given a lot of funds to various regions to promote their economic development, although it is not as exaggerated as Galicia, such as building roads, opening hospitals and schools, etc. At least it makes the people feel the goodwill of the government. However, there is one area in Romania where the local ethnic integration is very poor, that is, the new territories of the former Austro-Hungarian Empire such as the Transylvania region. The relationship between the Romanian people and the Hungarian people in this area is not very good, and the government not only did not ease the action, but intensified its efforts to encourage its own people to drive out the Hungarians. Social discrimination and taxation have increased the burden on Hungarians, and many families were forced to leave the land. According to the latest survey, the number of Hungarians in the new territory has dropped to 14.8%. You must know that from the east of the Tisza River to the Transylvanian border, the Hungarians originally had an absolute advantage, but now they have dropped to such a low share. It can also be said that in order to achieve the goal of expelling the Hungarians, the regional government also made great efforts. The influx of a large number of natives has also increased the burden on the Kingdom of Hungary. The influx of these people in a narrower country has further chaotic society in an already turbulent society, so that the kingdom's ruling Admiral Horthy was devastated by this. However, Edel would not care how Hungary manages these people. It was his arrangement to drive out the Hungarians. In the future Romanian kingdom, in addition to its own family, only a small number of other ethnic groups are allowed, at most Ukrainians who are easy to assimilate, and there may also be Bulgarians who do not pose a threat. If there are too many, it is easy to cause ethnic troubles. After all, there is a living counterexample around. Chapter 498 Financial Arrangements in 1913. Falling in love with Yao Kanshu. In the winter of 1922, nothing major happened anywhere in the world. If you insist that there is, then the establishment of the Soviet Union can also be counted. The Soviet republics under the control of the Soviet Union established the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics at the end of December, and the name of the Soviet Union finally appeared in front of the world. The establishment of the Soviet Union can also be seen as a change from Lenin and others to abandon the world revolution and concentrate on building a socialist country, because Stalin was the person responsible for forming the Soviet Union. As one of the most famous figures of World War II, Stalin's temperament has been thoroughly studied by later generations, and Edel certainly knew the character of this father. The father is most concerned about two things: the industrialization of Soviet Russia and the purge. Of course, from the perspective of future generations, we can comment on its role unscrupulously, but few people can put themselves in his position and consider the problem. As the only hostile communist country, the Soviet Union faced threats from all directions. At this time, the Soviet Union urgently needed to enhance its national strength, and rapid industrialization was their only option. However, according to Russian temperament, this goal is difficult to achieve without a death order. Compare the growth in the era of Khrushchev and Brezhnev. So there must be a whip behind them that drives them forward. Of course, the result of forcible driving will make people dissatisfied. It is fine for a short time, but no one can stand it for a long time. So at the 17th Congress in 1931, Stalin lost the election, and his name was ticked off more times than anyone else. When a secret ballot was held, the loss of a general secretary can be regarded as a very important event, which also shows how many people are complaining about the rapid industrialization. Facing huge dissatisfaction within the party, Stalin either stepped down or fought back. Of course, according to his tough character, he must fight back. After the final decision was made to increase the number of members of the Central Committee and make up for the number of members of the Central Committee, a major purge was inevitable. One of the essences of the Great Purge was to allow these officials to continue to complete the industrialization of Soviet Russia. Especially at that time, the situation in the neighboring countries of Soviet Russia was extremely deteriorating, and it was necessary to make Soviet Russia more powerful. Of course, guaranteeing his rule is one of them. But to be fair, it's hard to say whether the Soviet Union could survive World War II without such a tough leader as Stalin. As for the news of the establishment of the Soviet Union, Edel just glanced at it and put it down. This is Romania's main threat to the future, but he really has no way to deal with it at the moment. It's better to be concerned about Romania. You need to be hard on yourself. According to the latest Romanian statistics, in 1922 Romania's GDP reached a total of 32.76 billion lei. Among them, the industrial output value is 18.47 billion lei. The value of agricultural output is 9.64 billion lei. Now it can be said responsibly that Romania has entered the age of industrialization. And this value, $6.324 billion, is already higher than Italy, $5.641 billion, ranking after Britain, France, Germany and the Soviet Union, and it can be regarded as the top 5 economic powers in Europe. Moreover, Romania has a better advantage than Italy, that is, the vast plain terrain, which allows Romania to maintain one of the top grain exports in Europe. After the rapid development during the war, the Romanian grain processing industry and the food industry were very competitive in Europe, and Romania's traditional strong exports of automobiles and petrochemical products are also consolidating its position. It is worth mentioning that the export of Romanian fertilizers has also grown thanks to the large potash mines in the Carpathian Mountains. Several large fertilizer plants in Transylvania not only provide fertilizers for domestic use, but also export to neighboring countries, especially Poland, which has the largest export volume. Relying on Romania's strong economic growth, the government's revenue has also increased significantly. At present, the central fiscal revenue this year has reached 3.67 billion lei, an increase of 5.7% over the previous year. However, the increase in revenue is still not as good as the expenditure, and the listed fiscal expenditure in the next year amounted to 4.38 billion lei. Among them, the largest expenditure is the expenditure on the new territory. Of course, these funds are not listed separately, but are mixed into the budgets of various departments. The budget for education fund still occupies the top spot, and the expenditure of 543 million lei is still the top of the pack. Many of these funds were used to open Romanian schools in new territories. Because the Ministry of Education is considering a mandatory requirement, Romanian language and script must be taught in schools at all levels. Of course, other languages and scripts can also be taught, but there is a prescribed minimum duration for both Romanian and the script. In addition to this, they also want to increase the score occupied by Romanian Latin in the exam to entice students and parents to study. Based on the latest considerations, they intend to increase the score for Romanian to 100 for all other subjects. It can be seen that the Ministry of Education has also worked hard to integrate Romanian nationals. It is followed by the government's public expenditure of 417 million lei. The reason why this proportion is so high is also because of dealing with a variety of things in the new territory, such as mediating disputes between ethnic groups and so on. There is also giving local governments some powers to help them quickly solve problems that arise. And where does the power come from? In addition to promoting officials, the control of government funds is also one of them. However, this power is currently the Prime Minister of Karachari and has plans to take it back. Therefore, by then, the public expenditure of the government will also decrease rapidly. In addition to unexpected government public expenditures, the next step is transportation construction expenditures. Its expenditure of 379 million lei also remains the mainstay of government spending. This is caused by the renovation of other roads in addition to the expansion of road construction in new territories. At present, the Ministry of Construction is promoting the division of roads at all levels, including national level roads, provincial level, municipal level, and even village level roads. The Chinese class roads need to have two-way 4-lane roads, and the roads should be paved with asphalt to facilitate the driving of cars. The provincial level is similar, except that the requirements for parking oil roads are lower. and the municipal roads are even lower. Until the village level dirt roads, the next step is the expenditure of military expenses, and the expenditure of 342 million lei is definitely not low, because Romania is currently laying off part of its military personnel. That's right, the reform of the 3 regiments system under the auspices of Admiral Ferit is in full swing, and many officers and soldiers have been chosen to retire. According to Ferit's plan, Romania will reduce the total number of troops to 310,000, of which the army will remain at around 250,000. At present, 2 of the 26 divisions of the army need to be abolished. Except for a few remaining division-level troops, all divisions need to have a shelf infantry regiment. The Navy has expanded to 60,000 people on the basis of less than 40,000 people at present, because they will usher in a big development next. As a manifestation of their great development, the Navy can get 103 million lei in its military expenditure. This is the largest sum the Navy has ever received, and starting this year, the Navy's funding will also increase year by year. For this reason, Admiral Lomatin, the Minister of the Navy, Admiral Nestor Koo, the fleet commander, and others have formulated an ambitious shipbuilding plan. They plan to build 5 destroyers, 3 light cruisers, and 1 heavy cruiser in the Navy within 5 years, in order to calm the Army's anger at the huge increase in Navy funding. Edel assured Friat that it would not cut the Army's funding, and at the same time, increase the Army's funding at a rate of no less than 3% per year. In addition, it is worth mentioning that Romania currently has a social security and employment expenditure. However, its current proportion is not large, currently less than 30 million lei. However, it is believed that with the passage of time, its proportion is also increasing. Chapter 499, The Ruhr Crisis. Falling in love with Yao Kanshu, the arrival of 2019 did not make Europe more peaceful, but felt a strong atmosphere of tension at the beginning of the year. Because on January 11th, despite the opposition of the United Kingdom and the United States, France, together with Belgium, dispatched troops to occupy Germany's Ruhr industrial zone on the pretext of Germany's failure to fulfill its reparations obligations. This led to the outbreak of the far-reaching Ruhr crisis due to the severe consumption of the war and the needs of the newly added Alsace-Lorraine region. France's domestic reserves of raw materials, especially coal, are seriously insufficient, and the shortage of funds is still a serious problem. Originally, the French government hoped that the Treaty of Versailles would bring huge reparations, but because Germany delayed the payment of reparations on the grounds of inflation, and French Prime Minister Raymond Poincaré is a hardliner against Germany. As early as the opening ceremony of the Paris Peace Conference, Poincaré gave a speech denouncing the German Empire as born in injustice and deserved to die in shame. And he also criticized Clemenceau for making too many concessions to Britain on the Farcy contract. It can be said that he is the toughest politician in France against Germany. And in 1922, when Poincaré came to power, he declared in Parliament, the first and foremost matter facing France is that, even if there is a problem of reparations, Germany has the ability to pay the reparations, and the Allies have the means to compel him to pay the reparations in full. At the London meeting in mid-August, Britain and France did not reach any agreement on the German issue, and Poincaré, who attended the meeting, said instead, although France is empty-handed, it has no constraints. What makes Poincaré so emboldened is the French dominance of the Compensation Commission. The Treaty of Versailles stipulated that Germany should pay 20 billion gold marks in reparations before May 1st, 1921, and set up a reparations committee to solve the problem of the total amount and distribution of reparations. The committee was located in Paris and consisted of 1 representative from Britain, France, Italy, and Belgium. The United States only sent semi-official representatives because of its refusal to ratify the peace treaty. The French representative is the chairman, who has the power to make the final ruling on a 2-vote vote, thus giving France the de facto leadership on the German reparations issue. To prevent Germany from defaulting on the reparations, the Allies reached an agreement in April 1920. If Germany did not pay the reparations, the Allies could take sanction measures. In July of the same year, the Reparations Committee held a meeting in Spa with the participation of Germans, and stipulated the proportion of the reparations due to each country. but Germany delayed the payment, and by the beginning of 1921, the originally stipulated payment of 20 billion gold marks was about 12 billion short. So the reparations committee forced Germany to accept the reparation schedule stipulated by the Allied countries at the London meeting, held in March 1921. Germany refused. Seldorf, Duisburg and Ruhr in April of the same year, the reparations committee decided that Germany's total reparations amounted to 132 billion gold marks, including the 12 billion that Germany had not paid before May 1, 1921. On May 5, the committee issued a payment schedule and an ultimatum to Germany, demanding that Germany pay 2 billion gold marks a year and 26% of the value of its exports, and that the 1921 must be delivered by the end of May. Indemnity of 1 billion gold marks. If Germany did not answer satisfactorily by the 12th of May, the Allies would occupy the Ruhr. This led to the fall of the German Fahrenbach cabinet. The Worth cabinet, which was replaced, accepted the total amount of reparations and the payment schedule on May 11th, and Germany paid 1 billion gold marks in reparations by August. After paying the above mentioned reparations, Germany intends to delay future payments. In July and November 1922, Germany demanded a deferral of the remaining payments, citing a financial crisis. The British government supported Germany's request for a reduction in the total amount of reparations and a deferral of payments, but was firmly opposed by France. As a result, not only the differences between Britain and France on the issue of reparations intensified, but also the contradiction between Germany and France intensified rapidly, and France decided to take military action against Germany. The Ruhr industrial area is an important industrial area in Germany. It is located in western Germany, in the region between the Ruhr and Lippe, tributaries of the Lower Rhine. Its area is 4593 square kilometers, accounting for 1.3% of the national area. The population and cities in the area are dense, with a population of 5.7 million, accounting for 9% of the national population. The population density in the core area exceeds 2,700 people per square kilometer, and there are 24 cities in the area with more than 50,000 people. Even though the Ruhr area is small, it is the center of Germany's metallurgical industry, and its coal, pig iron and steel production accounts for more than 80% of Germany's annual production. Therefore, in the face of the military takeover of the Farbürgian coalition, German Chancellor Cuno ordered passive resistance, declared not to cooperate with the French and Belgian occupation authorities, recalled the ambassadors to Paris and Brussels, and stopped paying all compensation to France and Belgium. The miners and railway workers in the occupied areas went on strike, or sabotaged their work, and all railway and waterway traffic from Germany to France and Belgium was paralyzed. The law and the occupation authorities take coercive measures to control the management, production, and distribution of coal, prohibit the export of goods from the occupied areas, and levy coal taxes and other duties. All Germans who participated in passive resistance, including their families, were arrested, imprisoned, fined, deported and even executed. The German government also sent a note to the Allied powers and the US government, emphasizing that Germany will continue to carry out passive resistance until normal conditions are restored in the Ruhr and Rhineland regions. The note suggested that Germany should pay a total of 30 billion gold marks, some of which should be paid for by international loans. France found the German proposal to be insubstantial, and Britain was disappointed by the German proposal. Throughout the summer thereafter, despite British mediation, France refused to negotiate. Due to the loss of the Ruhr heavy industrial area and the huge subsidies for the occupied areas, Germany's financial and economic difficulties became more and more, and the value of the mark plummeted. In mid-June 2019, 100,000 marks were exchanged for $1, and on August 8, it fell to 0.00000 marks exchanged for $1. The Cuno government resigned on August 12 in the face of internal and external crises. After G. Strassmann succeeded as chancellor, he reformed the finance and currency, suppressed the workers' revolution, and announced that passive resistance would cease from September 26. He requested several times to negotiate directly with the French government, all of which were rejected by France. so he supported the coal industry syndicate to negotiate with the International Industrial and Mining Control Delegation and the Fabula District Control Committee. On November, the two sides signed an agreement, which stipulated that the coal industry syndicate resumed the delivery of coal and coke to the Allied countries, and as compensation in kind from Germany, France, and Belgium received 18% of the total coal output and 35% of the total coke output, from October 1 from now on. The coal mined is owned by the coal industry syndicate, and for every ton of coal sold, a tax of 10 francs is paid to the Allied countries. Through this agreement, France achieved the purpose of forcibly taking Germany's production collateral. The attitude towards the German compensation issue has eased, and the Ruhr crisis is drawing to a close. On November 30th, the Compensation Commission appointed two expert committees to discuss resolving the German compensation issue. Among them, the report of the First Committee of Experts on April 9, 1924, known as the Dawes Plan, was accepted by the Allies and the German government attending the London Conference, July 16 to August 16, 1924, thus temporarily resolved the German compensation issue. On August 16, France, Belgium, and Germany reached an agreement to withdraw French and Belgian troops from the Ruhr and other areas within a year of implementing the Dawes Plan from September 1. In fact, the Ruhr crisis was apparently caused by the dispute over the indemnity between Germany and France, but the underlying reason was the deep sense of insecurity in France and the contradiction between France and Germany. In the eyes of French leaders, given Germany's industrial base, population size and geographical location, it is easy for Germany to make a comeback. Once Germany's economy recovers and its armaments are rebuilt, France's nightmare will repeat itself. Therefore, at the Paris Peace Conference, France had strongly advocated weakening Germany, even dismembering Germany, and eliminating Germany's industrial and military capabilities forever. However, this plan was opposed by the United States and the United Kingdom. President Wilson tried to contain Germany and ensure the security of France through the collective security mechanism of the League of Nations. But the United States did not join the League of Nations after the war, which caused great concern for France's own security. The final outcome of the Ruhr crisis appears to be the ultimate victory for France. In reality, however, the catastrophic cascading consequences of the crisis were far more dire than the reparations France received. First of all, the most direct damage caused by this crisis is that France's international status has suffered a great blow. During France's occupation of the Ruhr, the franc also experienced a sharp depreciation due to the crisis. In order to stabilize the economy, France had to borrow a lot like the United States and the United States. In the negotiation of the issue, the dominant power had to be handed over to the United Kingdom and the United States, which were interested in supporting the recovery of Germany's economy. Another disaster is that on the German side, many veteran forces headed by Hitler and others were already deeply dissatisfied with the Weimar government's series of weak measures in post-war diplomacy. The Ruhr crisis was an excellent propaganda fodder for these nationalists. The weakness of the Weimar government and the policy of passive resistance caused damage to Germany is obvious. Although the reconciliation between Germany and France and the economic growth made it difficult for these extreme forces to gain too much support, when society fell into crisis and turmoil, bringing the Ruhr crisis out again is tantamount to a fatal blow to the Weimar government. Chapter 500, Taking Advantage of the Fire. On. When the Ruhr crisis broke out, Edel held a special meeting for this purpose. It's not that Edel has much sympathy for Germany, it's just that this crisis has huge benefits for Romania. First, the outbreak of the Ruhr crisis can allow Romania to poach people at a lower cost. Second, when a large number of factories go bankrupt, Romania can also purchase its equipment and technology in a targeted manner. So when the meeting was held, some of the important ministers in front of them even smiled. Well, what should we do in Romania this time about the Ruhr crisis? Edel ignored the smile on the minister's face and took the lead in setting the tone for the meeting. After Edel set the theme of the meeting, the new Minister of Industry Bardavin took a look at the situation and said, I think this crisis is an absolute good thing for our country. At present, the German economy has collapsed, and a large number of unemployed workers flooded in the city. At present, the German government has no choice but to deal with it after the crisis is over. we Romania can completely introduce a large number of technologies, equipment, and talents during this period to speed up the process of industrialization in our country. In addition, our country it is also possible to officially cooperate with the German government, and I believe they must be very happy with the goodwill from Romania now. Bardovin's speech was right, and Edel nodded in agreement, because the current unemployment rate in Germany has climbed to 28.1%. Millions of people live without a place to live. Moreover, the German gold mark is like waste paper at present, and even bundles of banknotes cannot buy 2 breads. These are all messages sent by Romanian institutions in Germany. Now Germany generally likes to use foreign currency masters as the unit of measurement. The US dollar, British pound, and leu are the most popular, followed by francs, lira and other currencies. There were even people guarding these Romanian institutions, and as soon as a person came out of it, they immediately rushed forward to ask for some lei. At present, the replacement ratio of lei in Denmark has reached the level of 1 to 1 million, which has also caused a long queue in front of the Rhodes Friendship Exchange Association. Some people even queued overnight for 3 days, and the whole family went into battle, just for one job opportunities. All of these were reported to Edel by Callist's Power Generation report, which also made him deeply aware of the current plight of the German people. After Minister of Industry Bardovin took the lead, Minister of Foreign Affairs Kostel immediately followed up. The current experience of Germany has aroused sympathy from all countries. I think my country can give the German government some moral support. For example, food, supplies waiting for some assistance. This will not only bring the relationship between my country and Germany closer, but also cooperate in some fields, which is very beneficial to our country. Kostel's words were also recognized by Edel. Unlike Minister of Industry Bardovin, who is on the front line of Prime Minister, he is a person who takes the post of Foreign Minister by his own ability. And his personal ability is also very good. He has served as ambassador in many countries. In addition, he is also a shrewd person. At least Edel did not object. He expressed his support for the Prime Minister's proposal, which is why Carachuri was able to accommodate him. Speaking of which, unlike his predecessors, Carachuri used people from other factions aggressively after he became Prime Minister. This also has a lot to do with Brătianu explaining that he was too late for not being re-elected as Prime Minister. The time is too short for Carachuri to distinguish who is available, and he can only promote a large number of officials with outstanding abilities. As long as they do not oppose themselves, then give the opportunity to play. Therefore, Carachuri, who just started as Prime Minister, had a very good reputation, and many officials were very close to the Prime Minister until the administrative restructuring. However, I would like to say here that the current Romanian administrative restructuring has been completed, and the 17 provincial governments have also divided their respective jurisdictions. At present, it seems that the dissatisfaction of these officials has been suppressed, and the work is proceeding in an orderly manner with 2 leaders taking the lead. Edward, the new education secretary, also stepped forward. Your Majesty, Germany's abundant educational resources are the guarantee of its rise. Under the current circumstances, I believe that many teachers cannot continue to engage in this profession with peace of mind. We can invite them to work in Romania. Especially those engaged in higher education are what we need most. It is necessary to know that the purchase of technology and equipment can only be guaranteed for a while, and it is still necessary to rely on the continuous training of the country to truly make Romania strong. What are your plans for the Ministry of Education at the moment? It seems that the Education Secretary's words piqued Edel's interest. At present, we have a preliminary plan to introduce about 800 scholars from Germany in 3 years to enrich domestic universities. The leading focus is on talents who can effectively improve the quality of universities in basic physics and chemistry, electromagnetism, and materials science. We also need to continue to increase investment in education, and I believe that the Romanian scientific community will have its own place in the world. Edward's previous words were not bad, but later Edel felt that it was a little difficult for Romania at present. It is clear that the Minister of Education thinks differently than others and sees it very clearly. However, there is some idealism that does not consider unexpected situations at all. and the current Romanian education funding is already high enough. Edel cannot increase its proportion. Even he privately expressed this problem to the Prime Minister. There is no denying that the Education Secretary is very correct, but Edel can't put a lot of money into it. It will take at least 2 to 3 decades for Romanian talent to explode. He can't wait, nor will the situation in Europe. However, the education minister, who was wholeheartedly thinking about Romania, Edel could only listen patiently. The education secretary is right. I will come down and discuss with the post-prime minister Edward, who was dismissed by Edel in 2 words. Still wanted to say something, but he moved his mouth and held it back. After being disturbed by the Minister of Education. This meeting that excited everyone was suspected of being cold. Of course, as Prime Minister Caraccioli, it is impossible for such a thing to happen. You must know that this meeting includes not only government officials, but also military representatives. So His Excellency the Prime Minister immediately interjected and said, Germany is currently in a crisis, and we can show some goodwill to each other at this time. And we will not delay the pace of continuing to introduce technology, equipment, and workers. In addition, according to my judgment, after this crisis is over, there should be a big change in German foreign relations. So we need to prepare early to get the best out of it. The Prime Minister's words caught everyone's attention, and it was unexpected that he had already thought about his work after the crisis was over. Edel looked at him with admiration today, but he smelled an old fox in it. After the Prime Minister eased the atmosphere, none of the ministers present were stupid and immediately launched their own plans to continue the discussion in this parliament. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.